conducting this meeting while Mayor Sluten is away. He is the presiding officer as mayor. We will be continuing to Zoom our meeting as we have in previous meetings. And we are reconvening from our budget workshop. Madam Clerk, we have a roll call.
Councilmember Overton? Here. Councilmember Kramer?
Here.
Councilmember Claffey?
Here.
Vice Mayor Purdock?
Here.
Mayor Sluten?
Present.
Very well. Councilmember Overton, would you mind leading us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much. And I have asked our city attorney, Mr. Jones, to lead us in the invocation.
Dear Father, we're grateful this evening that we could be gathered as civic leaders and as members of the community. We pray for a blessing upon our council, bless them with wisdom and guidance to make righteous decisions, good decisions for the members of Clearlake and for the citizenry here. We are grateful for the great day that we've had today. We're grateful for all the blessings that was given this community and all of us here. We ask that thou be with us, help us to have the guidance with us throughout this meeting. And we say this in the name of thy Son, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Very well. Well, presentations, one of our favorites, presentations of our June adoptable dogs. Lieutenant Snyder.
Good evening, members of the council.
Good evening.
We're going to change it up tonight, and we brought a really big one.
Is she vicious?
All right. Very. This is Cindy Lou. She's a 2-year-old female Chihuahua. She's currently spayed and neutered. She is microchipped. She likes sleeping in beds. She likes cats and dogs and riding in the car and receiving snacks.
Long walks on the beach.
Long walks on the beach. She likes shaking a lot.
Oh, I love it, yes.
So anybody who would like any further information, please contact the Clearlake Animal Shelter staff at 707-273-9440, or to see the animal in person, you can visit the shelter. They're located at 6820 Old Highway 53 in the city of Clearlake. They are available for viewings Monday through Friday from 12 to 4 by appointments. All right, thank you. All right, and for our shelter count for the month, year to date, we have taken in 169 dogs into the shelter. 157 of those dogs have left the shelter. 91 have been to various rescues. 44 have been returned to their owners. 21 adoptions. 1 animal was euthanized. We have a live release rate of 99%. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lieutenant.
All right, thank you.
Very good. Mr. Floor, next we have a presentation by Cal OES. I see that they are in the chamber. Would you guys like to come up?
Yeah, so if I could just give a brief introduction. You're welcome
come on
to
up.
come on up. As you know, we had the cash fire last August, and we were, I guess, required to take a little bit more of the lead than normal on some of the efforts as a result of the county's involvement. But Cal OES was wonderful to work with. Actually, Finance Director Young led a lot of the recovery efforts from the city side, and so we just wanted the opportunity for Cal OES to come and talk briefly about that and their experience with it. So I think maybe Finance Director Young wants to provide a brief introduction before you get going.
Yes. Hi, Amber. I'm so sorry that I don't
get to be there in person. But if I could, I would be giving you all a huge hug right now. So I'll just give you a socially distanced hug. Cal OES has just been incredible. They came in, they talked us through what to do. They helped the residents, they reached out to all of the residents, and it's been such a trying time for our community. But everybody that we worked with in Cal OES has just been so supportive and so kind and so efficient. We were able to get all of the debris removal done really quickly, and all of those properties are now turned over to all of the property owners who are now working on rebuilding. And so just really want to say from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. It's been such a pleasure to be able to work with you, and especially under such difficult circumstances. We really feel safer knowing that you have our backs, quite literally. So just we want to say thank you.
Thank you. It's funny that you are thanking us. I came here to thank you. I've been here 3 times, 3 different incidents, Pawnee Fire, LNU, and this year the Cache Fire. When we were talking about which counties we wanted in our division this year, it only felt comfortable to come back to Lake County. I've been here so many times, and I kind of knew what to expect. No, you know what? We build great relationships that way. I knew what to expect. It was going to be difficult parcels. I'd learned something new, some challenge I could rise to the occasion for. This team definitely stepped up. We always have the greatest welcome committees, whether good or bad, but we always welcome each other. And I knew what to expect, but what I did not expect was Kelsey Young and the county last year, Craig Willoughby. They're great partners. I did not expect the dedication and the hard work and the constant communication that we had to make this successful. So really appreciate, so I'm here to thank you. Thank you for your partnership, and thank you for making this go really easily. This year we cleaned up 36 parcels, 2 of those mobile home parks, one of them with 54 bays, one of them with 5 bays. We also cleaned up 5 tree-only right of entries, so we did trees as well, which is something new to our project. So again, just came here to thank you guys for your partnership, and if we do have to come back, I'm glad we have these relationships, and I know that working with Kelsey was easy, and I know that you guys are all backing her up, and I know they come to you and ask you to sign things and not always know why, so appreciate your partnership, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. If you could just stay there, please. We have something more to share. On behalf of Mayor Slutin, I would like to present Cal OES with this plaque of our appreciation for your dedication, because the true beneficiaries of your help are the folks that lost their homes and that were impacted by this fire. And by working together with the city, you really made their lives a little easier. And I can't even imagine what that devastation was like for so many that didn't have insurance and facing the cost of cleanup. You know, the city really appreciates that. You know, I was Supervisor Sabatier is here. We were at a meeting when that fire broke, and we were all just in awe how quickly it spread, and just the loss of life that was potentially there. You know, between our fire department, our police department, and everyone else who rallied to save lives. And then you were there to help us clean up. So thank you so much. We truly appreciate this partnership.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And next, without further ado, our water resources representatives are here to also report on the Cache Fire and monitoring results.
Yes, I think we should have Angela from the Department of Water Resources who wanted to, you know, this incident, we had a lot of environmental concerns because of the proximity to Cache Creek, and there was fire in the creek and whatnot, and so Water Resources was a great partner with us in trying to do everything we could to control that situation and provide monitoring. So, Angela?
Welcome, Angela.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I apologize for not being there in person. I'm 8 months pregnant, so I don't really like traveling too far. So thank you very much for accommodating me virtually. My name is Angela DePalma-Dow. I'm a program coordinator here with Water Resources in the Watershed Protection District. And I have about a 10-minute presentation for you that'll go through all the results of our monitoring effort in Cache Creek. So I'll just share my screen right now. And I want to make sure that you guys can see that.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we're going to talk about how we implemented this fast and affordable post-fire water quality monitoring response to the Cache fire. And I wanted to acknowledge all the co-authors and the associates that helped with this project from the water boards, as well as our department here in Water Resources. And then also our funders for the project. So we had to scramble and get some funds for this project, and everybody here pitched in: California Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board, Government of Yolo County Flood Protection Watershed Conservation District, City of Clearlake, and then some in-source funding here at the county. And then we had some partners as well from our IRWIMP group, AmeriCorps, and Washington State University. So you guys are pretty familiar with the Cache fire, and we just had a review from Cal OES. The one thing about this fire that was very concerning was a lot of the homes that were adjacent directly to the creek were built prior to 1975. This is before a lot of HUD standards were in place. So there's a lot of materials in some of these homes that were very concerning for water quality, and particularly such as asbestos, heavy metals, lead, mercury, PCBs, dioxins, and PAHs. And particularly with the sloped landscape, it basically, the community that burned with these homes is basically structured to funnel water directly into the creek when there's rain events. So we had like a boat ramp that funneled a road where water could go directly in, and then slopes right next to the creek. So concerning water quality implications after this fire. We have done monitoring after the Valley Fire and after the Mendocino complex. So some of the lessons that we learned that we applied here. Local resources are limited, and water quality sampling is very expensive, and every year it gets more expensive. And we don't have thousands stashed away for this type of emergency sampling. And then the types of structures and the amounts in these burn zones really increase the parameters that we need to sample to make sure our water quality is safe. And you would think that post-fire water quality monitoring would be included in traditional federal or state fire response funds. It's not automatically included, even if you have a drinking water source there. And I would really encourage anybody doing post-fire monitoring to ask for help from neighbors, ask for money, in-kind contributions. We gained $10,000 in lab support from our neighbor at Yolo County. So we had a presentation with them on one of our integrated water management regional groups, the Westside IRWIMP group. We had a presentation, we showed this photo, and they immediately stepped up and said, we'll give you $10,000 to do some monitoring of the water quality there in Cache Creek, because they could see the potential impact they could have from this burn area down the slope and into the creek here. So it was really valuable to have that additional help for the lab resources from them. And so we actually gathered a bunch of support from around the community because we needed to implement this sampling strategy. So we had 2 sites we know we needed to sample, and we had over 13 parameters that we wanted to look at. And at first we really had no funds available to do this. So we reached out, we got some, we looked at some internal funds that we could afford, both for labor and lab analysis. Like I said, Yolo County pitched in about $10,000. Then the Yolo County Flood Protection District sent us a check for $1,200, had for $2,000, and then also offered some help. City of Clearlake, you guys committed $5,000. We ended up not needing that because we didn't have enough rain events to go over our internal labor funds. And then once the fire was declared emergency, we got $12,000 from the water board for specific lab analysis. So not for labor, and there was a limit on the types of sampling that they could pay for. But this was a big help and got us an overall around 40 grand to put towards this project, which could fund about 6 or 7 storm events for the sampling that we needed to do in this site. So there was a need for this fast response, and what we did is we went to the site. We did many site visits to pick some sample locations that made sense to get the best representation for water quality. We had to get right of entry. We worked with the City of Clearlake. Thank you so much, staff at City of Clearlake, for helping us with that. We talked to neighbors, those still in the area, to kind of get an idea of the conditions, where water flows, where does it sit, kind of what happens when there's a storm event. And then we worked really closely with the state and the city and any of the such as the cleanups, the BMPs that'd be in place, so we could get an idea of that mitigation. And so here's that we couldn't find the end of, so we knew water land sampling. And then we also, you can see here this photo on the bottom left. This is Cache Creek. You can see there's intake directly there going up the hill to this house on the lower lake side. And it looks like these trees are dying or going through fall color change, but actually it was fire retardant that was dropped on the creek directly across the creek to prevent the spread. So all of these things played a factor in what we might see in the creek during the sampling. So here's what we did. Here's the map of our site. So I don't have the burn layer on here, I apologize, but it's right under this arrow here. Our downstream site is this blue dot. Our upstream site is this orange dot. And what we wanted to do was be able to take grab samples of both these sites to get before the fire scar and after the fire scar. But what happened in October, we remember we got that atmospheric river event, and basically the creek filled up with water faster than the lake did. So all the water went backwards, actually. It actually went flowing toward the lake. So we were out sampling, and we noticed our upstream site was actually acting like a downstream site, and the downstream site was acting like an upstream site. And if you live near this area, you've probably noticed this before in the past, but it really complicated the way that we thought about having to look at water quality monitoring. So we considered these sites switched during that first atmospheric river event. They went back to normal downstream, upstream after that event, though. And then we wanted to see how that area was in comparison to the fire event. So we actually have some historical data at the upstream site from one of our programs. We have some water quality data through previous years we've collected at the orange dot. That was our temporal site. And then we had a spatial site. So this year we started a stormwater monitoring program with help from the city of Clearlake. And so this yellow triangle right here on Sigler Canyon Creek is a reference site in space. So we have some data there we can compare with these sites on the creek near the burn area. This is the list of the parameters that we sampled. The ones in white are all the ones that we had sampled during the Mendocino complex. The ones in black are the ones we added to this fire monitoring event because of the type of structures that were on the landscape. And after consulting with some water quality and burn and wildfire experts at Washington State University, these were the ones they recommended and the water board agreed. We did take our total organic carbons, but we had some lab issues, so really only have data for that for one event, and we don't have any comparison data, so I'm not going to talk about those today. Some of the monitoring challenge we had, as you can imagine, low water levels, so it was very difficult to determine when was the best time to sample. This is our upstream site under the bridge on Lake Street, and you could see when the beginning of the season, there was not much water there. So what we want to do is make sure that we actually captured ambient stream conditions when we were sampling here and not just a puddle that had been sitting there all summer long that wouldn't give us accurate data about what the stream conditions are when we're comparing to fire impacts. And this is our downstream event. Again, you could see kind of some stagnant green water. We wanted to make sure when we sampled, we were capturing actually the storm runoff from that fire. So it was very hard to determine when that first flush was. I mean, we had that big atmospheric river, so that's when we sampled. So here's some results, and this is us sampling actually during one of those storm events. So you can see not much water there, but a little bit more than those puddles. And this is the hydrograph. So this is actually those 3 storm events we had this year. This is that first one in October. We had another one mid-December, and then we had a couple big ones in January. So this is Cache Creek. This is at the dam, the gauge that's there by USGS. And so these were our 3 storm events that we sampled. Okay, so here's some data for you guys. And remember, our upstream site is the orange. The blue is our downstream site. So we would expect to see any fire impacts reflected in those blue dots. The square in the white lines, that's our historic upstream. This is how what it looked like years prior to the fire. And then Lower Lake is the nearby site. So, and the red line is when our Cache fire event occurred. So we're looking at dissolved oxygen. This is important for biologics in the creek. And what we can see is we had, a kind of smattering. Dissolved oxygen was kind of all over the place, both at a nearby site that didn't have any fire impacts and the upstream and downstream sites. We look at conductivity. This is how much ions are in the water. We can see, again, stuff is kind of spattered around. We can see our nearby site has kind of higher conductivity, our downstream and upstream site kind of mixed in. I would say there's nothing much going on, at least for the fire, based on the conductivity and oxygen we sampled here. We look at pH, another indicator if there's inputs from some event. And what we see is we have higher pH at our nearby Sigler Canyon site, lower pH just in general in Cache Creek, whether it's before the fire area or after the fire area. So again, not much change in pH, but not much influence on the fire from pH here either. And we can see pH in general over the drought years looks like it's increasing when there's low water in the creek. For turbidity, this is how much stuff is in the water, how cloudy the water looks. And this is very typical post-fire, and that's exactly what the data suggests. So turbidity is relatively low, normal years at our nearby site. Our downstream sites, we had elevated turbidity here, but not that much. These are all less than 100. When we looked at turbidity after the Mendocino fire, sometimes we were getting like 4,000 NTUs for turbidity, which is a lot of stuff in the water. So not much here, still pretty clear water even after a fire and downstream. For nitrogen, these are all nutrient data that I'll show, and we just didn't get any detects of nitrogen throughout the season. So not much data for that, whether in the fire or in other nearby sites. We look at total suspended solids, just another measure of stuff that's in the water. Very typical for a post-fire event. We see those downstream sites have higher concentrations of total suspended solids, but they decrease as the season goes on, which is exactly what we'd expect with a fire. There's a lot of stuff that's flushed in after that first atmospheric river, and then it decreases as the season goes on, you get more flushing. And the site's getting cleaned up too as we go on in that time period. And then we have the Cache Creek phosphorus. We care about phosphorus because that can drive cyanobacteria algae blooms. And what we saw is we had slightly elevated phosphorus downstream, but not by much. These are all low levels of phosphorus, so even comparison to our nearby site. So we had some influx, but not a whole lot, and slowly decreasing over the time post-fire too. Next, we have some metals. And again, there's a lot of stuff here, but I'm going to highlight the ones that are the most important. And then the colors are the upstream, downstream. And remember that first event here on the left, they switched. So that's why the colors are switched around, because the water was going the other way. So the things that popped out, either higher levels than we would expect or concentrations we expect, or higher in the downstream than the upstream, are things like calcium, barium, manganese, and vanadium. Those are the ones that popped out that were significant. Usually after fires, like the Mendo complex, we would see things like iron, aluminum, maybe some arsenic. We saw some of those in the first flush, but none in the next round of samplings, and nothing really too concerning. Now we look at what did pop out, and we want to know, well, what does that mean? What does it mean for metals or for exposure? And we didn't see, again, any repeating of these mercury, lead, arsenic, the ones that we would be most concerned about. And for the ones that we did see, the calcium, cobalt, barium, manganese for downstream, they all were well within limits for the Basin Plan water quality objectives or maximum amount, or World Health Organization daily intake limits. So we see some metals pop out, but the amounts they're in are well within some normal levels for either wildlife or even drinking water concerns. One thing we did see that was interesting was the vanadium. I did more research on that, and actually it's a source from volcanic springs. So we have a lot of volcanic springs around here, so that's probably the source of that particular metal that popped out in those concentrations. In general, I'd say there's not really any huge metal concerns, especially because we didn't see any increasing as the season or stagnant in the season, and nothing popped out that was of high concern for chronic or acute levels based on regional and global water quality objectives. Lastly, we have our organics, our VOC screens, some of our dioxins and furans. And what we can see from our VOC screens here on the top for all of the storm events is we had no detects for any of those that we have listed here. That's great. Our PAHs didn't have anything detected. When we look at some of our dioxins, furans, we did have pop out an OCDD. I didn't know what that was, so I had to do some research. And this is a pesticide, a chlorinated pesticide, and it's very commonly found in smoke emissions, byproducts of chemical synthesis. And that makes sense because we had a fire, there's stuff that was burned. However, when I looked up more about this particular pesticide is not toxic to mammals, and is also not toxic to juvenile zebrafish. And this is when these things are exposed to concentrations that are much higher for much longer periods than what we saw pop out in our stream samples. So I would generally conclude this isn't one of concern, and it just was a residual that popped out from some of the runoff from the site, but it didn't show up in any of the following storm events. So some of the take home, this is my last slide for you guys, is we did see some downstream increases, turbidity, total suspended solids, some phosphorus, but we did not see non-recurring metals. So we saw some metals pop out, but they weren't of high concern, and a lot of them didn't increase or stay maintained throughout the sampling season. Contaminants of concern, we didn't see any VOCs, PAHs, or PCBs. Dioxins, furans, again, we saw that OCDD, we talked about that as being not concerns. We saw the heptadioxins the first flush, but not with any of the other sampling events. What we did learn is drought complicates post-fire monitoring significantly. The low water levels make it hard to determine that baseline or when that start is to sample. If we didn't have an atmospheric river and we had a bunch of little sprinkle events, that first flush would have been really, really hard for us to determine and for us to get some accurate sampling at that site. And when we looked at lower dissolved oxygen, we saw this at all sites across the whole county, all of the urban areas. So just in general, when we have drought years, lower dissolved oxygen, and this isn't something that's unique to the site for the fire. And that local knowledge was imperative, being able to talk to folks that live there, being able to notice when the water was going downstream and not upstream, or upstream and not downstream when it was supposed to, was really important for us to get a good picture for this project. So that's what I have for you today. I have presented this to the water board, and they received it well. They have a copy. I've also presented it to the Risk Reduction Authority, and I will take any questions now. You can also take my email here if you have any follow-up questions. And thank you again so much for letting me present this project today.
Well, Angela, I'm relieved that you're relieved in the findings of your inspection of those areas. Any council members have questions for this report?
Nope, this is the second time that I've heard Angelina's report, so I have my questions pretty well answered.
Mr. Mayor, any questions? All right, thank you, sir.
If I could just add briefly.
Yes, please.
I mean, I think, the results, I believe, are largely a testament to the reaction of Cal OES, Water Resources, and the State Water Board. They were great partners with us, and they sent folks out at our request to put a bunch of mitigation measures into place. I went out personally a couple of times. They had a lot of issues with installing some of them based on the rock and stuff that was in the area. Let them know that we didn't feel like what they had done was adequate for what was coming. They came right back out. We spent a lot of time walking, every foot of the area. They said, what do you want to see here? They came back, they installed it, and they, hardened it up. And I think, that resulted in a lot less impacts to Cache Creek. So thank you again to everyone for that.
Thank you, Mr. Fleur. Appreciate your comments. Any other questions, comments? Angelina, thank you again very much. We do appreciate your time, and this was a very valuable report.
Thank you so much for having me.
Very good. Last in our presentation, number 5, is a presentation by the Anderson Marsh Interpretive Association on the planting of valley oak trees.
So as Mr. Bornstein and his folks come up, I'll just give a brief intro to this one as well. So,
Thank you.
As you're aware, we have a few affordable housing projects being constructed in the city as a result of the state of California's desire to encourage affordable housing development. They have statutorily exempted these projects from CEQA review. And so some of the normal impacts that we're able to mitigate through, say, the use permit process and actually performing a CEQA review, were not in place on a couple of these projects. One in particular that's underway on Old Highway 53 called Canocti Gardens, which they removed a large number of oak trees from that site. Fortunately, the city of Clearlake has an oak tree mitigation ordinance, which resulted in them not wanting, it requires replacement and various other things if you remove trees under certain circumstances. They did not want to replace the trees, but you may recall a few years ago the city council enacted a fee in lieu of replacement. And so the city received a payment of nearly $100,000 from that developer just for oak tree mitigation. And so we reached out to a number of folks in this room to see what we might be able to do with those fees in order to sort of offset that impact from that. And this is, kind of the first part of that project, but I'm excited for the partnership that's come together, and would like to introduce Mr. Henry Bornstein to give us the details.
Welcome, Henry, and if you would mind introducing your friends.
Yes, I will. I'm Henry Bornstein. I'm on the board of the Anderson Marsh Interpretive Association, or AMIA as we're called. This is Roberta Lyons, our president, and this gentleman is Ryan Martin, who's the Natural Resources Manager for the Northern Buttes District of California State Parks, which is the district that has supervision over the Lake County State Parks. I'd like to do is, the reason AMIA is involved, what we are offering here is that because of our special contract with the state of California as a cooperating association to provide funding and other projects for the park, for Anderson Marsh State Historic Park, we're able to easily set up a vehicle for getting funds from the city to us, and then we donate it into a fund that we've set up to the state. So it eliminates a lot of the paperwork involved in from a government to government transfers regular. So it makes things go a lot easier. So we entered into an MOU with the city, which states the budget and what we're going to do, which will be explained by Ryan later. Before Ryan goes on, I thought I'd like Roberta just to tell you a little bit about AMIA and what we have in mind here.
Welcome, President Lyons.
Good evening, everyone. Well, the Anderson Marsh Interpretive Association it's basically a partnering nonprofit with California State Parks. We're kind of like a Friends of the Parks group, and we raise money for projects and programs at the park. We're leading monthly walks, and we also do school field trips. And I think some of you might have been to our Christmas at the Ranch celebrations before COVID. We used to do a few things at the historical ranch house itself, which that was one of the more popular Christmas events in town. The AMIA was founded the park was purchased in 1982, and we were founded, I think, around 1984. And I got involved in the 90s, and so it's just been a supporter of the state park for many years. And we're pleased to be able to do this project with the city of Clearlake, and we appreciate that you care about the beautiful oak trees that are part of the real character of this city. And we hope that more can be done to protect the trees, and I think you should charge more for each tree or not let them be cut down at all. But anyway, okay, so that's my little talk, and I'll turn over to Ryan.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again.
Thank you, Roberta.
Yes, thank you all for having me here. Really appreciate it. This is a really cool partnership that we definitely want to highlight. So I have a little short presentation. Hopefully we can get keyed up here. All right, so you can go to the next slide. So this is just kind of a overview map of the marsh. So we have several kind of areas within Anderson Marsh. So the North Flat area is up on the north of this map. We got kind of the main ranch house down there in the lower right of this image. And then we also have actually part of the State Historic Park is a natural preserve as well, kind of preserves that marsh habitat, which is somewhat unique here around the lake. Next slide. Here's just aerial, kind of recent aerial imagery showing some of the trails. So for folks that haven't been out on the trails, I definitely encourage it. Great spot to get out. I was out there all morning, kind of hiking around, checking stuff out. So great excuse to be in Lake County. It was a really nice morning. Next one. So total for the park is about 1,350 acres, and our habitats include, we've got some riparian, the marsh, as I mentioned, oak woodland, and the grassland habitats. Next. So as kind of what we've talked about is the proposal that we've put forth is to plant 100 valley oak seedlings. The goal is to plant them in kind of 3 of the areas, so right around the grassland, around the historic ranch house, and then also up at North Flat. And then we have a tiny little sliver along Seigler Canyon Creek, and so I'll get into that in a little bit of detail. But also wanted to share, this is the photo of my ACE team right here. My A team here is part of my crew that will be likely doing the work. And this is actually a 27-acre site that we did over on the Sacramento River. Next. So thankfully, when I started, Henry approached me about this. I went back through some of the data that we had, and we've found had been some previous kind of soil or investigation into the soils. This map here in that green kind of depicts where the soils are suitable for oak plantings. So these are the kind of areas that we targeted. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So we also have a GIS specialist on our staff, which is a really new and unique opportunity. So I actually had her put this together for me on Tuesday morning, which kind of threw it together for us. But this is an overview map, just kind of detailing where we plan to plant the oaks. We'll go into we can zoom in on each of these areas, but as you can see on the kind of upper portion of the map, that's the North Flat area. We've got in the green, that's all around kind of the main ranch house. And then it's kind of tough to see, but on the lower right, there's the little sliver of Seigler Canyon Creek. Next slide. So this is just zooming in, looking a little bit at that central, kind of the main ranch house. So as I mentioned, our goal is 100 seedlings. We're targeting about 60 within this habitat here. Next. So here's a look at the North Flat. So for this one, we're going to target about 30 oak seedlings to be planted in that area. And then our final one is the Seigler Canyon Creek. So this is just a tiny little sliver that's on the east side of actually 53. Doesn't get a lot of use. I think there's a small little pool out there, but we also have plans to put about 10 little seedlings into that area. All right, next. So timeline, what we're looking at for this would be, if you go ahead and click a couple of them, it'll populate there. So we're looking at fall of 2022. So we'll get in there, and our goal is to prepare the sites, kind of knock down some of the invasive species that are in the area. We'll purchase the supplies, do some prep as far as building cages and mulch. And then we have a local native nursery that we purchase a lot of our supplies from. We may also grow some in-house because we do have some oaks that we grow in-house. And then the goal is, let's hope we get an early rain and we can get them in the ground early in the fall.
We all hope for that.
Yeah, we can all hope for that, right? And then winter, spring, we'll check the plants, weed around them as needed, and that's something that Parks has agreed to kind of take on. And then also as part of the project proposal, we put in to purchase a kind of a skid mount water tank with a hose that will be left at the ranch for this project and future projects. And then kind of another really, of course, being state parks, we definitely want to push and working with AMIA on some educational panels. So at the end, once the oaks have kind of become established, we'd install 2 panels, one at the North Flat, kind of at the trailhead there, and then one at the main ranch house. And these are just some kind of examples I pulled up that we have of some different stuff. Go ahead, sorry, thank you. And then kind of looking ahead, 2023, 24, that's when AMIA would kind of step up and continue that kind of ongoing weed maintenance. Generally, for restorations, you want to have, at least a year or 2 of, giving them a little bit of water and maintaining around them. And then, we'd have the equipment there on site that AMIA could use as well. And I think that's it. So any questions on anything that we presented?
What varieties are you going to plant?
We're looking at Valley Oak, so that map that we looked at, we're open to doing some other oaks, but the thought was to kind of target that grassland and put the Valley Oaks in there.
Thank you very much. It's very important to plan for the future generations that will enjoy that. We won't be able to sit under the shade of those trees, but I hope
Nope.
our great-greats will.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
enjoy that park as well.
Yep.
I had the pleasure of cutting and baling hay out on that pasture north of the ranch house and working cattle on that ranch when I was younger, and knew the two Anderson brothers
Wow,
that were last
yeah.
lived in that house
Yeah,
when I was pretty young.
yeah.
I'm glad to see it's been being maintained, and as Vice Mayor Burdock says, will be there for future generations to enjoy.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from council? Thank you very
So,
much.
a couple more
Yes, go
things
ahead,
before we
sir.
finish. So the cost of this project is just over 21,000. So we've entered into an agreement with EMEA for that. And I do have a ceremonial check that I would like, maybe we could get a picture after this. But there's one person who didn't come up that was actually part of this process, Deb Sally, with the Sierra Club. I actually reached out to her and first and was like, what are we going to do about this? And so she pulled in a bunch of other folks, and we met a few times in trying to figure this out. And so again, there's more money in that fund. This is just kind of one start to the project. So we're hoping that this is just the beginning. We can figure out some other projects to invest in. Mitigating the loss of the oaks that we did have, so.
Thank you, Mr. Fleur.
Melissa, could you go to the next slide for me, just for me? It's gone. Nope. I just, one of my favorite birds in Lake County is on the next slide. It's lost. Oh, well.
Director Swanson's a miracle worker with that stuff.
Yes.
Let's do a photo op while she's pulling it up.
Oh, there it is. The cinnamon teal, one of my favorite birds in the county. There we go. Oh, this is a big chick.
Crowd in here, everyone.
All right, get in here, Debbie.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much for being here for our presentations. This concludes our presentations for the night, and I appreciate the latitude allowing me to get started with that. I would like to jump back up to item E, adoption of the agenda. Mr. Fleur, is there any changes to the agenda?
Well, we would like to pull items number 9 and 10 from the consent calendar. This is 2 contracts for abatement of property. We did the bid opening today, and those bids came in lower than expected and within my authority to issue the contract, so the council doesn't need to take action on them.
Okay, so just to confirm, removing items 8 and 9 from the consent?
9 and 10.
9 and 10, thank you.
Mr. Vice Mayor? do
Well,
you-
hold on.
Public, go ahead.
Anything else? No? All right, go ahead, Mr. Kramer.
Mr. Vice Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented, with the exception of items number 9 and 10, which will be pulled.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Kramer and a second by Councilman Claffey. All those in favor, go to the voting list.
And Madam Clerk, could you register a vote of aye for me, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Actually, with the council, yeah, with the council member who's remote, we'll need to do a roll call for every vote.
Oh.
Glad you're here, Mr. Jones.
Me too.
Sorry, guys.
Hey.
We'll get through it,
I like
Mayor.
All right, Councilmember Overton. Aye. Councilmember Kramer.
Aye.
Councilmember Claffey.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Purdock.
Aye.
Mayor Slutin.
Aye.
Very good. Moving on to our next item, agenda item, item G, public comment. Public comment is a time for any member of the public to address the city council on any matter not on the agenda, or a matter of the jurisdiction for the city. Now, the Brown Act, with limited exceptions, does not allow council or staff to discuss any items brought up during public comment. And the council cannot respond or take action on items brought forth under public comment. That said, do we have any members here tonight that would like to address the council? If you do, please step forward. Ms. Sally, thank you for coming. Would just state your name and your address?
My name is Deb Sally, and my home address you want?
Just, are you a resident of Clearlake?
I'm a resident of Clearlake. And I'm not sure, I mean, these are they are on the agenda, but they're not part of the comment thing, so I had two comments, one about the Anderson Marsh thing and the oak tree ordinance, and then one about animal control. Is that
Those are
something I can talk
presentations,
about?
those are fine to comment on, go ahead.
Okay.
The animal control contract is a specific
Are you talking
item
about the
on agenda.
contract or
Well,
our
just about
adoptable
animal
dogs?
control in general,
Okay.
so.
If it's specific to the item on the agenda, then we would need to hold your comments until we are addressing that item.
Okay, so you can actually have comments during the business section, okay? I'm not sure how this would be interpreted. This is just sort of general comments, I think. So, I'll start into it, and then if you think it's inappropriate, just let me know.
You have 3 minutes beginning now.
And I might need a couple extra minutes since I have two things. But so
Nope.
first, I wanted to thank Ellen Flora for bringing together the group of people to help decide how best to use the funds obtained to mitigate the cutting down of oak trees. And I thank Henry Bornstein for working with the state park people to arrange the tree planting in Anderson Marsh. And we do have more funds, as was mentioned, to use, and we're looking for good places to do that. One of the options that we've discussed is to provide trees to citizens who have lost trees to fire or other issues. If this is of interest to anyone in the public, please let us know. Okay, and then the second item then is about the animal control situation. And I am a veterinarian that's been providing veterinary services for our animal control for most of the last 30 years. First as an owner of the Clearlake Veterinary Clinic, then as a volunteer, and finally as a paid contractor. I have watched it go through many changes. Over the past nearly 5 years, since Charmaine Weldon has worked for the city's animal control, things have dramatically improved. I sat on the ad hoc committee for Clearlake Animal Control with some very concerned and dedicated people for a few years before and during that time. Police Chief White and city managers Folsom and Flora attended many of those meetings. With their leadership and Charmaine's tireless dedication, the city has greatly improved the situation for the stray animals in the city. Thanks to Chief White and the city staff, we have gotten a nice facility with more dog kennels, a cat room, an exam room, and an office space. We have some excellent employees right now that do a great job of helping Charmaine keep the animals cared for. Charmaine has set up a large network of rescues and other shelters to help us be able to send animals to new homes rather than to have to euthanize them. She also set up a nonprofit to help pay for veterinary care and other things to help people and their pets. Because of this, we have achieved a status of a no-kill shelter. All of these helpers were involved. Unfortunately, we still don't have the capacity that is needed to deal with the overwhelming number of unwanted or improperly cared for animals that need assistance. Having North Bay Animal Services take over the patrol functions for the city saved us during a time when the city was unable to employ its own animal control officers. There have been challenges with understanding everyone's role with these multiple entities involved, but overall I think things have gone fairly well. There have always been more animals in need of sheltering than was possible. For a while during the COVID lockdown, things eased off a bit. Now the number of animals that have been housed at the shelter has exceeded what is healthy for the staff, volunteers, and animals. This problem is multifactorial. In my opinion, the biggest problem is that we have a large number of citizens who do not take responsibility for their pets, and more than that is in the case of most other jurisdictions. We have ordinances in place, but there aren't enough staff or the space in the shelter to enforce them. If people would and could afford to have their pets spayed, neutered, and vaccinated, and then, of course, keep them from running loose. Can I go ahead?
Go ahead.
It would be a different scenario altogether. Thankfully, There have been efforts to assist with this by other organizations inside the county and out, such as the SPCA of Lake County, Jameson Animal Rescue Ranch, and several others. And former councilperson Phil Harris donated equipment to help the sheltered animals through his business, Performance Mechanics. The sad part is that the number of animals in need is not likely to change in the near future, which means there will continue to be too many to handle in a manner that approaches ideal. I don't believe that having North Bay Animal Services take over the entire operation is going to solve these problems, but I do believe it's the only good option the city has right now. I think it is important for the city staff and council members to have an active role in assuring that the citizenry and their pets are continuing to get the best possible service. I hope that there will be parameters set up for what the council sees as successes, and that frequent monitoring will be a part of this contract. And a continued effort to educate and regulate the citizenry around animal care is essential. Having only one animal control officer for a city that receives the number of animal welfare and at-large calls that Clearlake receives is, in my opinion, inadequate. But then there would be even more animals that need to be housed if there were more officers. At some point in the future, I think the services and the number of kennels will need to be expanded. Another thing that I think needs to happen is for the shelter to hire a veterinarian that can dedicate more time and provide a broader range of care than I have been able to contribute. I know how difficult this can be. I hope that in the meantime, the local veterinary clinics can provide the necessary services. Thank you to all of you who have put time, energy, and funds into helping the pets in Clearlake, and I hope to be able to continue to be of help in some capacity at making this a successful endeavor.
Dr. Sally, thank you for those comments. We appreciate them. Is there anyone else wanting to address the council during public comment? If there is, please step up, state your name.
My name is Rodney Galen, and
Up to the microphone, please.
I don't know if this has anything to do with what's going on with the thing, but I'm a property owner that was directly affected by the cash fire and had the honor of using Charmaine in the animal control and saving my animals, and I was reunited with them and everything. But I bored them up in an area that was affected by the cash fire, and with all this going on, they're trying to tell me I can't be up there, with it. I've been an advocate for the cleanup since the day of the fire, every day since then. I've been up there being a part of everything that's going on, and it sounds like what you guys got going on is wonderful, but there's not much going on. We keep getting, as being somebody willing to take on the task of taking care of their own property and taking care of their own stuff. I've went out of my way, thousands of dollars and man hours put into cleaning up the burnt metal and steel and all that stuff. And through every aspect of it. Running into roadblocks due to some kind of rule here, county code here, or something going on. And I'm under the impression now that they're going to have road closures up there, and I'm not going to be allowed to continue to board my dogs there, and stuff like that due to what's going on with it. I don't know. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm here to find out what I can do to be an active part, in what's going on there, since I am a property owner there, and that's just kind of where I'm at with that.
I'd recommend that you direct your attention to city staff and asking those questions of city staff.
Yeah, it's kind of like everybody's kind of puts it off to the next person. I've been here for 10 years. I've had this property all this time. I've been using it up there all, and I don't break the law. I'm not part of the garbage problem. In fact, I cleaned it up big time. I board dogs. I could help out with the problem that the animal control is having. I'm more than willing. I've done mass cleanup. 100 dump runs. You got rid of burnt cars. All that kind of stuff up there. And I'm trying to see, there's money being allocated for these kind of things. I was wondering how I could jump on that bandwagon, since I've been, seriously, I don't live there. We have a place. I live at Kingfisher Mobile Home Park right there on 53, but we have to go up there every day, twice a day to feed the dogs, water the dogs and do all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of activity going on up there. And I just don't, it doesn't make sense to buy a piece of property and not be able to use it,
Well, thank you for your comments. I might direct your attention if you might want to speak with Lieutenant Snyder, since he is overseeing our animal care and control. Sure. Thank you very much, sir. Anyone else wanting to address the council under public comment? And again, we can't speak of anything on the agenda. If you have comments about anything on the agenda, I'd have you hold it till then. Yes, sir.
Well, my name is David Farrell.
Welcome.
I live in Laytonville, California, and I'm an absentee landowner. I own 2 parcels within the area you're talking about closing off. That is the
Is that an
Fifth
agenda?
Avenue. Is
Yeah,
that-
it's the it's the public hearing.
Right.
Next item on the agenda, item number 18, so.
So
comments will
when we
wait
get to
till-
that item, sir,
Oh, you
we'd
haven't
let,
got to the item yet?
we haven't gotten to the item yet. We're just dealing with public comment on anything not on our agenda.
This is on our
Well-
agenda.
Yeah, and this is on our agenda, so we
Okay.
will talk with you then.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Director Swanson, is there anyone on Zoom wanting to speak at this time?
There are no hands raised within the Zoom, Vice Mayor Purdock.
Thank you, Director. I do have a request for public comment, I believe by Shirley Harvis, that wants to talk about bonds, but I don't see her here. So we'll pass that.
I believe that was a submission from a Mr. Smiley Harris.
Oh, I apologize, I had a hard time reading that. Is Mr. Harris here? I don't see Mr. Harris. Haven't seen him in a long time. Thank you very much. Moving along to the consent agenda. Any member of the council like to? I apologize. Let's go on to public hearing. I will open a public hearing on item 18. Mr. Flora.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council. So this item, consider a resolution approving an 18-month road closure of multiple roads in the area of the cache fire. So you're familiar with this process because we instituted it in the Gobi area by Pomo School a couple of years ago. And it was proven to be somewhat effective in deterring illegal activity, including illegal dumping. And while, you know, some of the efforts around the cache fire deterred some of the activity for a period of time, we're starting to see, again, an increase in illegal dumping and activity in that area. And so we're recommending that we move forward with a similar process of installing K-rail and a series of gates to restrict access to the entire area. Now, this is a larger spot. If you measure it out, I mean, it's in excess of 200 acres. It's a lot of individual lots, no infrastructure, very difficult to navigate through the area. I think in excess of 33% of the properties are in tax default and have been for a number of years. So a lot of issues that just really make it difficult for us to address some of the issues that are out there. The process, just to give you a little bit of background, does require a public hearing, a legal notice, both in the newspaper and sent to all the affected property owners, which has been done. We have received input from a few of them. I guess maybe I'll quickly share my screen because we do have a sort of map that may be helpful in identifying kind of the scope. So, you know, this is sort of the cache fire area here that you can see, and the different colored lines are where K-rails would be installed. It's not like a consistent boundary everywhere, but areas where access could be identified. And then the little pin marks you see are where gates would be located. Of course, we have to provide access to fire. Now, really, there's only one property owner behind this area that actually has a residence, a legal residence that lives there. Those property owners are in attendance, and we have met with them. Obviously, they were a little bit concerned when they got the notice about, am I going to be able to access my house? And so we went over the plan with them, and I believe their concerns have been satisfied. So with that, that's kind of the overview. If the council is ready to move forward with this process, we would identify K-rail. We do have some left over from the Gobi project that can be relocated, so we can do that. And we would purchase gates and begin the efforts to restrict access to this area. And then, of course, this is kind of only one piece of the process. Hopefully, it would keep the illegal activity from getting worse, restrict the illegal dumping and that type of thing. There would need to be some cleanup efforts undertaken over time. Of course, the city does undertake some cleanup efforts, but of course it's ultimately the responsibility of the property owner to clean up their own property, even if someone dumps illegally on it. And then our hope is, because of the large volume of tax defaulted properties, that with a new tax collector in office in the new year, we'll be able to work some type of deal to get some of these properties back into productive use and change the cycle here. So really the only other option that I see moving forward long-term would be to disincorporate all this and let the county deal with it, but that's probably not an option that you want to consider. So anyway, that's kind of the overview, and I'll be happy to try and address any questions that the council
Appreciate
has.
your comments. Councilman Kramer.
Yeah, just one question. Would vegetation removal be part of that cleanup in any of the areas where there is?
It could be. A lot of the vegetation was removed last August from a large part of the area. Of course, there are certainly some areas that could use some additional vegetation removal. We've been working pretty closely with CAL FIRE on some other properties, and we'd certainly be willing to approach the idea with them and see if they can help us with some additional efforts here.
Thank you very much. Just a comment before I open it up to the public. This is a very sensitive issue on both sides. We've also heard from property owners plagued with illegal dumping occurring on their property, plagued with the cost of removing litter and other abandoned cars and that type of thing, can be, quite a considerable cost. And so we tried to use these K-rails to try to mitigate some of that illegal dumping and help these property owners out. So with that, and again, trying to, I'm about to get to there, to try to move forward and make our city a cleaner and safer city to live in. Mayor Slutin.
Yes, I had two comments. One is, this is an area that as of, 2 days ago, a fire started there in that area because of illegal activity. And also, I just want to make sure that the fire department has proper access to this area. It's an area that's been, fires have been started there numerous times, and if we can keep people out of there, and hopefully that would be one part of the solution.
Thank you, Mayor, for your comments. With that, I will open this hearing up to the public. Anyone wanting to make a comment, please step up to the podium and introduce yourself.
Hello, my name's Nicole Cook, and I have properties there in the flats, you call it, out off Dam Road. And I'm in the process of cleaning up my property, and I would like to be able to have access to it. A lot of them are on 6th and Wilkinson and 5th, and I guess Cash and Wilkinson in between there. And I'd like to be able to access my property instead of it be barricaded out. And I think that cameras are a good way to catch people instead of investing in rails, K-rails, because Homo School area, it didn't make a difference. People are still dumping there like crazy. In fact, worse, off of 2nd Street. And Toyon, I take care of properties there, which for somebody that was blocked off, that somebody pushed through with a motorhome, and they're still dumping in there. So the K-rails aren't stopping the people from dumping there. I don't know if you've been there lately. But that's just my comment. I'm hoping you can keep at least my part open, and I'll keep maintaining like I always do, cleaning it up. But I think cameras are the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cook.
So I'm assuming no property owner is going to be blocked out of their own property, correct?
Right, I mean,
Kinda
that's,
illegal.
that's sort of the deal. I mean, we would provide keys to appropriate gates for property owners that needed to legally access their property.
Sir, would you like to ask your questions, make your comments now? Thank you.
Again, my name is David Farrell. I've owned property in Lake County here for over 30 years. I didn't inherit them. I bought them as an investment. And the properties that you're talking about now, the closing off, I'm all in favor of that. I haven't had any access in the last 25 years. When I first bought them, I used to be able to drive up there. But then somebody put up a fence and a gate, and I was unable to get through. And so I thought, fine, great, because people were just going up there and dumping things, and I thought, it's going to be a while since I'll be able to do anything with this property. So now recently, I was sent an abatement notice, and I wasn't given enough time. I tried to call. There was nobody to answer the phone. I got messages that you can contact us. You can issue your complaints by sending an email. But there was nobody to talk to about it. By the time I figured out that they were talking about those lots, because I also own 2 lots up on the 5th Avenue, and I own 1 on 28th Avenue. Over the years, I have been maintaining the one on 28th, but I hadn't had access to those others until the fire. I didn't even know it burned. And so I was not informed that abatement notices were going to be sent out and that, penalties would incur. My first penalty was like for $100, and by the time I got over here with my dump truck and excavator, which I had to repair the road to even get up there, and by the time that was on a Saturday, and you folks sent out another penalty of $200 on Friday. Again, there was nobody for me to talk to. So I feel like, I'm not being represented, I'm only being fined, but I am in support of closing off those roads. And I think the idea of a gate, but it's going to take more than a gate. I've driven around, I've kind of, now that the place is burned off, I went up through 18th Avenue. That's a mess up there. There is a gate after you go way up there. But it's like a dump up there, a city dump. And people are centralized. Over there on 5th Avenue where she's talking about on Wilkinson, there's homeless people living in there. There's an encampment back off to the left. It looks like that all they do is go out and steal cones and road signs. So, yeah, well, it looks like you're thieves to me. Those people could be run out of there. It's just a mess, And there's, all the stuff that people have been dumping back there for the last 30 years that have never been removed. I don't know. Who
Please hold your comments. Go ahead, sir.
So anyway, whatever I can do to help, I don't know that, I would like to suggest that, maybe that you send out a letter suggesting people who own, absentee owners, who thought that maybe someday this is going to be worth something. Like I said, I've owned it for 30 years and nothing has come. You can't even access it. Nobody's been up there with even a cat. When the fire tractor came through and cut a swath through there, fire trail, they went right through one of my parcels. So he left a lot of brush on my parcel. Everything else got burned off. And so I cleaned up all that brush, but there was no water bars cutting any of the roads. It was just really poorly done. I'm an engineering contractor, and I think a lot more could be done just in even 2 or 3 days with a cat up there. because the other thing that's going to happen up there is you're going to have, if we get a big storm, you're going to get a lot of erosion, and all that silt is going to end up in your Cache Creek. So I think you need to send a contractor up there to do on those roads, to put water bars in and put gates up and have them go in with an excavator and take those there's a lot of big rocks, boulders up there. They could be placed instead of K-rails on either side of the gates. And you could, mitigate some expenses that way. But, when I was up there, there was several people that were accessing the property from way up on top. I don't know how they got up there. It was suggested maybe they're coming in through 18th Avenue or something. And then there were people camped out in motorhomes, and then there were people coming and going. There was people on foot walking up the hill when I was working up there. I don't know where he went, what he was doing, but he was up there for an hour or two and then came back down. I was there all day. And as I said, I had to repair the road. Just to get my dump truck up there, I had to repair the road. I brought a load of rock in, and I put rock on that road. So whoever your abatement officer is, I don't know how he was accessing. It must have been with a drone, because it's that property is not that accessible. Anyway, I would like some comment on that, what you might be able to do to move forward with all that. And the other thing is if you could send out a letter to all these absentee owners. I mean, there's hundreds of lots up there, and those people don't even know what they have probably. If they were offered some kind of a value that you could assess the properties at, and then they could write those properties off and donate them to the city, then you could forward those properties to a developer or somebody who would just buy up the whole lot, and then it would be worth doing something. But 100 by 50-foot lot, out in the middle of nowhere with no access is, just nobody's going to do anything. So it's just going to be a problem going on and on and on. And the only way you're going to alleviate that problem is
Thank you.
to do something. Yeah, I know you're tired of me. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wanting to address council on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back and close the public hearing on this item.
There's someone on Zoom.
Oh, we have someone on Zoom?
Kelly Wood, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I really just had a couple of questions that I don't know if they'll be addressed. My family has owned lots in that area since the 1980s with the intent to retire there at some point when they bought it. Most of them were elderly family. Most have died, all except for my mother. She dealt with the same thing the gentleman who just spoke to always would come and look at her property. As she got older, it was difficult for her to get up there until last year. She got letters stating that she was going to be fined, and then she was fined, and then she was told $1,500 for somebody to come clean 50 by 100-foot lot, which is ridiculous, $1,500 for somebody to clean that size lot. She did finally pay the fines. She paid the money to have somebody clean it because this was during COVID. She's 87 years old. She cannot get up to that lot. We suggested that she try to sell the lot, but the realtors basically told us not going to happen. You'd be lucky to get $2,000 for it, and we want $1,500 in commission. So she tried to give the lot to the town. She tried calling them. They said you need to put a quick claim in, and it needs to go through council. She tried to get information on how to do that. Nobody called her back. She has her property in an estate. She called her lawyer. Her lawyer tried to contact the town to develop a quick claim form for her to give the property to the town. Nobody called him back. She is paying money for a lawyer to contact somebody, and nobody in that town is calling that lawyer back. Now, I went up to that property on Mother's Day, and I cleaned it. I cleaned it down to the bone. I live in paradise. I understand what it takes to keep vegetation clear. I have to keep all of my acreage in Paradise clear. I lived through that fire and I take care of it. I understand it. But I want to know, if you're going to put gates up here and K-rails up here, am I going to be able to put this property up for sale? Is a potential buyer even going to be interested? Because now it is an inaccessible lot. When am I going to know whether or not that lot's been cleaned? I spend hours up there cleaning that lot. What's going to stop you from telling me, hey, you didn't clean it, it's got a whole bunch of garbage on it, because somebody did that 2 days later? How are you going to prevent people from squatting? We deal with that up here in Paradise, with people who are squatters. You cannot be on a lot unless you have garbage, unless you have electricity, unless you have sewer. So nobody should be on those lots unless they have those things. So I'm just at a loss here as what to do. And if you can give me some insight, that'd be great.
Thank you, Ms. Woods. Mr. Fuller, do you have any comment for the last two members of the public or correction?
Well, I don't know about the contact related to contacting the town. I assume that she means the city, and not getting a response. That certainly shouldn't have happened if there was actual contact made. You know, the city, I mean, this is one thing that we're trying to do to prevent some of these illegal activities, but you know, one thing that I've found in having a number of appeal hearings from folks who do not appreciate the code enforcement activity in this area and others is that there's an expectation of the city to be a property management company for their private property, and that's certainly not our role. And you know, it's difficult with absentee owners who may have had property in the family for many years and up until very recently haven't had to perform a normal and adequate level of maintenance to property that they owned. And obviously there's a number of issues that we have that we can't allow that to continue to happen. And so, you know, if y'all have a better idea on how to address this, this isn't a perfect solution. It's one that has worked fairly well in some other situations, and we believe is the best path forward initially to begin deterring illegal activity in this area. You know, there was some comments earlier about going in and putting in water bars and a number of things. You know, it just, at least in my opinion, makes no sense to expend that level of resources on an area with no infrastructure, where it's almost impossible to develop a lot. And you know, I know that's not a great situation if you own one of those lots up there. This was a situation that was created many decades ago, and it's unfortunate that we haven't figured out a solution to try and deal with it. I mean, we certainly have some ideas over the long term on how we can break this cycle. But again, you know, we're not a property management company, but we are going to have to step in and do some things. You know, the idea about the tax defaulted properties, that's one avenue for us to be able to jump in, possibly acquire some properties directly from the county, merge them together into larger lots that may actually be developable. And as we see an increase in legal activity in the area, it's going to deter a lot of these problems. But again, I mean, this is a section of the city that never should have been subdivided in the 1920s or 30s. And here we have it as a problem within our city. So again, I could bring up the idea of disincorporating it and letting Supervisor Sabatier figure out some creative solutions.
Yes, Councilman Claffey.
City Manager, you mentioned that if a property owner does need access, they can go through the city to acquire access. Can you just talk through that process a bit, and has that been utilized in the past over in the Gobi Desert?
Well, I'm assuming that it has happened through code enforcement. I'm not directly involved in that, but I would assume we would use the same process here. And Chief White's shaking his head, and he may want to, I think he has some other comments he would like to add on anyway. So, yeah, I mean, we would have to have some process of determining that you actually have property in the area or have authorization from the property owner to go clean it up or whatever it is that you want to do. But certainly our goal isn't to keep legal property owners from accessing and maintaining their property.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone want to address?
Chief.
Thank you, Councilman Kramer. Address the issue of remedies as far as citations. That issue came up, and I don't believe any answer was given on that. Chief White?
So I looked at, I believe, both properties. I didn't see any notes on the ones with calling. That's not acceptable. Lieutenant Snyder's here. We've had several conversations about making sure that that gets addressed. I believe one of the issues is the message machine is extraordinarily long. The background on why that message is so long is because I believe the city, well-intentioned but not effective, code enforcement has served as a property manager for many people in this city, and it's at the expense of all the other taxpayers within the community. I did look at the second commenter with the property, and this is sort of endemic of the problem that we deal with out there. So they had a case a year ago, they received notices, there's smashed up cars, all kinds of stuff. A year later, we're back out there yet again. There was the notices sent out. There was communication in the notes going back and forth. I don't see at quick glance anything about turning over the property to the city. Yet another well-intentioned but misguided thing. I think that the decision for the city to repeatedly, somebody makes an investment. Sometimes your investments work out good, sometimes they're not. I was shocked to find out here with the extent of code enforcement issues that we have, that when you have the really, really bad properties or the bad investment properties, that the answer was turn it over to the city. This last year, I believe we spent somewhere over $100,000 of taxpayer money to go and clean properties that were turned over to the city. That is part of the problem that we have, and I think this idea of what is the city going to do to make a bad investment somehow profitable and everything else, I'd redirect that to everybody else in the community to ask them why is it their responsibility to do that. The second thing is, at what expense do we continue to allow this to go on? And I think if you talk to the people that fled from the cash fire, that they would have a very different opinion. Unfortunately, they're not represented here. I appreciate the gentleman that spoke and the second person about sort of trying to take their piece to take it on, but clearly it's a huge problem out there. I would say with respect to what's being proposed is a temporary closure. The city does have the opportunity, and I think that the next step would be looking is just to completely abandon the road network out there and declare it's no longer needed for travel. They're just paper parcels that are out there essentially. So it's a complex issue. I responded out to the fire last night, and I was talking with the two incident commanders from fire, and they mentioned, the K-rails, they're a blessing and a curse. They do impair access to things, but they also talk about the positive impact that they've had. So I just want to offer, we can certainly look in on a individual basis if there's calls not being returned. We are addressing the phone message issue. And with respect to turning over the property, I think the message that needs to come, unless of course council wants to change that, is the idea of turning over your bad investment to the city is not something that I'm going to recommend, or code enforcement, or to otherwise help individuals do that. It makes no sense at all. Thank you.
Chief, thank you for your counsel and your comments. Is there a person or a number that we might be able to provide to the public that could get a response?
Yes, Lieutenant Snyder to make contact with the gentleman back there so we can get his information. We'll look and see. The number, it looks like on the other case, they've had contact with code enforcement on all the notices. The number is at the notice if they need to contact code enforcement. But to call us 707-994-8251, and then they can be connected with code enforcement.
Thank you, Chief. Any other member of the public wanting to speak on this item regarding the closure of multiple dirt roads in the area of the cache fire? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council.
The only other comment I'd like to say is that we
Okay.
do pay our taxes. Somebody's collecting those taxes, somebody's getting the money.
If you're going to speak, you need to come to the
You need to be at the
microphone.
mic, sir. That way everyone can hear.
The only thing that you haven't, again, I'm David Farrell.
Thank you.
I just want to remind you that we're all paying taxes on those parcels. So you are collecting money.
Yeah,
Well,
the other,
I have 30 years I've been paying my taxes.
And thank you for
And I
that.
paid the abatement fees.
And I
so-
appreciate you being a responsible property owner. As the chief mentioned, we've got many out there that are not.
Yeah. Anyway, but I'd like to see some of that money go towards, fencing up the property.
Thank you, sir. And I think Lieutenant Snyder's going to have some time for you. Yes, sir.
Just to give the council an idea, the amount of property taxes paid on the value of these properties is somewhere between $20 and $30 a year, of which the city receives somewhere around 12 to 13%.
Thank you, Mr. Fleur.
Unfortunately, that gentleman walked out the door before you said that.
Any other,
I would say that there was a written comment that was submitted with some questions to the clerk earlier today. If you want, I could read the
please?
the comment and questions. Okay, so I'm Pal Pastorino, one of the parcel property owners in the Cash subdivision who will be impacted by this resolution. Thank you for your attention to these issues, and I will be zooming in to tonight's proceedings. I have some questions which may echo the thoughts and concerns of other property owners in this affected area, which I politely request be addressed by the council tonight, and they are: 1, how will current debris on properties be addressed, ostensibly pre-closure by the city, and will there be any financial impact to property owners? I think we kind of talked about this earlier, but current debris on property is the responsibility of the property owners for cleanup. What will be the extent of the access for property owners during this closure period, i.e. vehicle, ADV, foot only, supervised, unsupervised, hours access when access is allowed? Again, legal property owners who would like to have access can contact the city and receive access to the appropriate gate. There wouldn't be, of course, supervised access beyond that. What are the expectations of the city of the property owners during this 18-month closure period? Maintain your property. As the value of our property will certainly be diminished during this temporary closure period, what will be the impact of property taxes during this period of time, i.e. suspension or reduction? City has no, responsibility related to that, so to my knowledge, there would be no impact to the minimal amount of property taxes paid in this case. Thank you for addressing these questions during the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Flora. Councilmember Overton.
okay, so I just kind of want to make sure everybody has this really clear. If the road closure happens, all property owners that have legal access will be able to contact exactly who specifically, so that it's out there. Are they going to be notified by mail on how to contact to enter their own properties? Because we can't just say that we're going to close it. They're supposed to just automatically know. There has to be some kind of notification to them.
Okay, well, they all received notification of what was proposed in this hearing. I guess, we could send an additional letter to the property owners out there with specific instructions on how to access the property if the council would like to direct us to do that.
I think that's necessary, because we can't legally block entrance to legally owned property. I don't think that's just something I want to be
Actually, you
doing.
can,
Well,
this.
I'll put it this way.
Yeah.
I don't think I want to be one to vote that that's okay. It's not okay for me. I think as long as we're going to notify them of who to contact and how to get access to their properties, I think that's essential. Because I don't want to just go block some of these property and they don't even know, especially ones that don't actually live here. And what if they do come up and decide to do something? I think we need to notify them.
Well, I want to clarify that they have been notified, consistent with state law, and there's a specific provision for this type of thing to block access for illegal dumping and illegal activity.
And I would like them to be notified, if we go through with this, that how to contact somebody to get access to their property.
And again, if it's the direction of the council, we can send additional notification.
If that's the direction of the council. Thank you, Councilmember Overton. Councilmember Kramer.
May I suggest that we put some signs on the gates for access for legal owners, contact this number? Wouldn't that help with that, that issue?
What if they come up on a weekend or something? I think they need to be notified by mail.
Well, again, I think City Manager Flores said they have been and will be notified, but the sign on the gate will at least give somebody, if they missed that, they'd have a number to call.
I think, I'm fine with both of that. I'm fine with the sign being put up, but I'm also fine that if we go through with this, that they're notified that their road is gonna be closed. Because being notified that this is on the agenda does not notify them that it's actually happening.
That's correct. Any other comments by council? Mayor Slutin, any comments?
I think at least we need to put a sign on the gate, and that has to be a number that's, every day accessible to be able to get into your property. As a responsible property owner, you're going to want to find out whether or not this resolution passed. So we need to have them, those signs on the gates to make sure that they're accessible, not 24 hours a day, but at least every day. There might be people that are coming up on the weekends to deal with their parcels, so they need to be able to get that information to be able to get access to their property when they come down and look at it or try to clean it up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Chief White wants to make a
Just
comment.
as you're deliberating on what to do, I just want to comment from a staff perspective. The police department would not be able to accommodate that, nor code enforcement to guarantee that on a daily basis that we could do that. So if the consensus of council was to do that, we are unable to deliver that service without cutting another service to the rest of the community.
Well, then, excuse me, but then a letter needs to be sent to them, because at least a letter needs to be sent in if you're not able to, because I assume if these are out-of-town property owners that they want to do this during the weekend, and all of a sudden they show up and they can get there. So, but at least with a letter to them, then they're notified how to be able to get into their property.
Mr. Mayor, that would be determined by the action taken by council tonight? Is that what your direction or your comment?
Yeah, it's similar to what Councilwoman Overton is suggesting, a letter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Overton.
Oh, I just want to, so I have a piece of property there. I find out, I've decided I want to come and I want to take care of this property. We're going to have a gate there. It's going to have a key on it. Am I correct?
Yeah, there's.
Okay, so then, when they need to be notified so that they know where to come and pick up a key, so they'll have a key to get in and out of their property. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, if you're recommending
Property
that we
owner
send
has
them
a
a
right
letter.
to a key to that gate, correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so
it's not my understanding that we're handing out keys.
how are they going to get access on a regular basis?
Because we'd have to provide access. I think here's the challenge from the police department. We're in this predicament because the property owners as a whole out there don't take care of it. We lost an entire mobile home park because people don't take care of the properties up there. Yes, there are some isolated cases of people taking care of it. I understand the direction and the concerns about noticing and coming tonight, but I think we have two people that showed up, plus the other comments that came through. That's the level of interest of individuals maintaining it. Now, certainly, somebody may not have gotten it, they may be out of town, that sort of thing. But we just really have to understand, and I don't know how to relate to you, that from the staff perspective, this takes an inordinate amount of time. The discussion about money, the rest of the city subsidizes taking care of these particular areas. How we've handled it in the Gobi Desert area was that an individual would call in and say, hey, I'm going to be coming up on the weekend to take care of it. We'd work it out on sort of a case-by-case basis. I wouldn't if we're going to hand out a key, I would say let's just leave it open, because the problem is then one person gets a hold of that thing and the next thing you know, it's just open and it's left there. So I certainly understand the idea of making sure that individuals on property can take care of it.
I just would tell you from the practical perspective, as you deliberate on it, that's not what we experience. It's 95+% individuals that don't take care of anything. But if we create these processes, we will be pulling other resources for the reality that only a few people will follow through. So case-by-case basis, yes, we can handle it. They contact us, say, hey, I want to do this. If there's somebody that's truly coming up every single day or something to do it, we can have the conversation. But I would also caution too that there is case law which talks about you cannot have selective access to roads for certain individuals. That's established in law. In case law interpretation of state law. So you can't have a selective public roadway for individuals. And I think that's what we would run afoul of if we start to hand out keys to say, well, you can go through because you're a property owner.
So if somebody wants to access, say, these people who are wanting to go up there, they are going to contact who? And who's going to go out there and let them in?
We have to pull a resource. In the Gobi Desert area, we've been pulling code enforcement to be able to accomplish that. I just can't guarantee that 5 days a week they'll be available to go out and do that task to let them in.
It's a scheduling thing, Chief?
What's that?
To be scheduling?
It'll be scheduled through code
Yeah,
enforcement?
typically they would call and say, hey, I'm going to come up and take care of it because it's not usually a frequent access. At least the Gobi Desert, that wasn't the case. They'd get an abatement notice from code enforcement. They'd contact, say, I'm coming up on this date or my contractor is. We'd kind of work with them and make it mesh in with the schedule.
Thank you, Chief. Councilman Kramer.
Chief, in the Gobi, how often did you have that happen? How often did people want to come in?
Most people don't take care of their properties, so it's infrequent. The challenge is that if you say, as a matter of policy, we're to have it, accessible 5 days a week, and we will respond to everything, then that's where we run into issues.
So they would be accessible in the same manner as a Gobi. Given this is a larger area, do you think it's going to be a substantially more, or because a lot of these properties haven't been accessible for 50 years because of the brush and stuff, that it probably won't be a lot of people? Give me some idea.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be substantially different than what we see the other. I think the whole reason why we're having the hearing is because they don't take care of it. So, I'm not excited or thrilled about pulling resources to even be able to provide this, but I realize the concern that if somebody has a property and they want to take care of it, we want them to do that because it's one less property. So I think we could accomplish it if we address it in the same manner as what we did in the Gobi. And we would be clear with them. To Councilmember Overton's concern of what, who does a public contact? I get that. We can put that on our website. We could look internally. I don't want to commit to it, but we might be able to, if we send notices that particular area, to have like a line in there that says,
what I was gonna ask.
hey, this area is subject to closure, therefore please call this number, well in advance. I think there's some things that we could do with that. The mailing thing, I'm not opposed to doing it. I just remember it's cheap on an individual basis, but it costs a lot of money to send these things out on the totality, and then that pulls from something else. But I hear the concern about trying to address it.
So, as I was going to,
I really wasn't quite.
well, I wasn't finished when
finished
you
yet.
started either, so.
Go ahead, Councilman Kramer.
City Attorney Jones, what's the legal what is the property owners, do they have legal right to get into their property? Do we have the legal obligation to let them into their property?
We know we have the right under the vehicle code to restrict the access. So the fundamental ability to restrict it for this particular purpose because there's dumping can be done. I do think you have to have some reasonable access. I don't think it needs to be, certainly not on a 5-day-a-week basis, especially when in light of the resources that are required for that. So if it's something similar to what we have been doing at the Gobi, I think that would comply with the law.
So, and what Chief White had just suggested is workable and legal?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilman Over.
Okay, so what I'd like to see if we go through with this is, even if you just put say you send out a code enforcement on this particular property, I don't necessarily mean, but there can always just be a little slip that goes in there that says, this is a restricted area, please contact, correct? It doesn't have to be.
I would try to
whole
do that.
chapter.
I'm not sure
Yeah.
mechanically how to do it, but if we can make it, I mean, it's a computer, we can make it do anything. We will try to accomplish something like that so that on the notice of violation, it would say, this is this area's been closed pursuant to council order. You need to call this number. That's what we would try to. Minimally, what I'm hearing is that it sounds like there's almost a consensus that we need to send out a follow-up thing if, in fact, you approve this, to say it's been closed and to provide, here's a single point of contact at the city if you need access, and go from there.
Would that not be easier than having to change everything on the notice of violation?
Sure, it's just they will perhaps ignore that one, and so I think if we could accomplish both, it'd be better.
Okay.
Because they'll say they didn't get that one, and then
Okay. I got
back
it.
where we're at to begin with.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, if I could, I mean, just remind the council that there's one legal residence behind this restricted area. Property owners don't have the right to keep dogs up on the property with no primary use or without a residence, that type of thing. And so almost entirely, the only time people go up there for legal purposes is when they receive a notice of violation from code enforcement to clean up the public nuisance on their property.
Thank you, Mr. Flora. Councilman Claffey.
I don't think we necessarily have to follow up by mail, but I do want this clearly communicated on our website. I'd like us to standardize the process. This is at least, we now have multiple zones like this. We could potentially expand to more areas. So I think would like staff to come back with a very clear process on how owners can access these properties. And then finally, for the owners who did show up, thank you for caring. But this is a huge problem. For every one of you, there are another 50 that have properties that are in terrible condition, and the city needs to address this. And hopefully you can be part of the solution, but this is part of the solution. So we appreciate all the help you can get, but we do have to move forward on stuff like this. So thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Slutin, you had your hand up for a moment.
Yes, I just want to concur with Councilman Claffey, and I understand from Chief White the logistics of this. But we most likely, as Chief said, people want to start cleaning up when they get code enforcement. So maybe another part of the code enforcement letter says that your access is restricted. If you want to get in there, you need to call us and figure it out or something like that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And just as a point of order, the reference to the Gobi would be the Parkwood subdivision, also referred to as the streets. Any other comments? Do we have action?
Mr. Vice.
It's closed for public comment, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Vice Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 2022-39 and read by title only. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Clearlake authorizing the temporary closure of certain roads to reduce illegal dumping and to protect the environment and the public health and welfare.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Kramer and a second by Councilmember Claffey.
Before the vote, could I clarify any additional direction related to communication? As I understand,
Yes, please.
The direction would be to have a clear process identified on the city's website, and additionally, as feasible, communicate that process through notices of violation to property owners through our code enforcement division. Is that correct?
Thank you, City Manager. Do we want to amend the motion?
I will amend the motion to state what City Manager Flora has just stated.
Thank you. And I have a second. All those in favor, can we have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Overton. Councilmember Kramer.
Aye.
Councilmember Claffey.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Purdock.
Aye.
And Mayor Slutin.
Aye.
Thank you all. Appreciate the participation. And for those members, property owners, thank you for coming here and having your voices heard. Moving on to item number 19 of this public hearing, adoption of appropriations limit, the gain limit for fiscal year budget 2022-2023, and designating the formula to be used for calculation of same. Mr. Flora.
Yeah, I don't know if Finance Director Young wants to add anything, but this was discussed in our budget workshop. I would just refer you to the staff report and try to address any questions you may have.
Any questions from council?
None for me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any questions from the public on this item? Seeing none, I will bring it back to council for action.
Mr. Vice Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 2022-39, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Clearlake. Whoops, I got the wrong one here. To go back, hold on. Where are we? Okay, here we go. Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 2022-42. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Clearlake adopting the appropriations limit for fiscal year 2022-23 and designating the formula to be used for calculation of the same.
Second?
I have a motion by Councilmember Kramer and a second by Councilmember Overton. Madam Clerk, or Madam Director, could you have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Overton? Councilmember Kramer?
Aye.
Councilmember Claffey?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Purdock?
Aye.
Mayor Slutin?
Aye.
Motion is approved. Moving on to item 20, adoption of the City of Clear Lake's budget for fiscal year 2022-23. Mr. Flora, or are you passing that to Kelsey?
Go ahead, Ms. Young.
Ms. Young.
So we already discussed in the budget workshop, but so just ask you to refer to that, but I am available if you have any additional questions or would like to discuss anything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Any comments from the public regarding our fiscal budget for year 2022-2023? Please step up to the podium. Madam Clerk, or Madam Director, any comments on Zoom?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you very much. Bring it back to council for action.
Mr. Vice Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 2022-43, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Clear Lake adopting the City of Clear Lake fiscal year 2022-23 budget.
Second?
I have a motion by Councilmember Kramer and a second by Councilmember Claffey. Madam Director, would you mind offering a roll call vote?
Councilmember Overton? Councilmember Kramer?
Aye.
Councilmember Claffey?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Purdock?
Aye.
Mayor Slutin?
Aye.
Thank you all very much. We pass unanimously on that item.
If I could just make a quick follow-up comment, thanking Director Young, department heads and staff for doing an excellent job. This is the first time since I've been here when I haven't been very involved in the budget preparation, which has certainly been a pleasure for me. And it's Director Young's first time really in doing so on this level, and she did a great job even with having to work from home a little more than she would like. So anyway, I just want to thank everyone for doing a great job.
Yes, thank you to all. Moving on to item J, business. Closing the public hearings, we'd move on to item 21, consideration of a contract with North Bay Animal Services for animal care and control services here in the city of Clear Lake. And I see our representative is in the room.
Chief White's going to give an overview.
Thank you, Chief White.
Thank you, members of the council, members of the public. The item before you tonight is a pretty significant change to how the city would potentially conduct animal care and control going forward. Before we dig into the the meat and potatoes of this item. I just wanted to sort of flash back because one of the things that I've seen over time is that with much progress, you often forget where you come from. And I'm not suggesting councils forgot this, but I thought it'd be good just to remind everybody. So up on the screen there is the old office for animal control. Right next to it is the hangar that had dog kennels inside of there. It was worse even before that, and I wanted to recognize Lieutenant Snyder, who's here, who was tasked with this item when the city took back over animal control. They did the best what they could with the funding that was available at the time and tried to make things work, but we believe that we could do better, and so we started searching for options, and along the way we ended up with this facility that's out there, which certainly it's not the Cadillac of animal care and control facilities, but it's nicer than what many other cities have, especially those with the limited means that we have. We have put a lot of effort into it. It was already mentioned earlier by Dr. Sally, the animal ad hoc members of the council that are here. So many people have been involved with helping move the city forward, and I think quite frankly pushing to make things happen. I don't think that it's ever been for a lack of want in this community to do better for the animals or to address the issues, but it always comes down to what resources that you have available. The police department over the last 5 years and particularly in the last 4 years has really tried to do the best that we could. We've worked with the city manager and outside funding sources to fund this project and to really make things better for our community and align with the strategic plan of this city is to try to do things right and make it look appealing to the public and so forth. We've literally put all kinds of personal effort into doing things out there. The trees that are out there were planted by staff from PD, taking care of the kennels, making things happen and all that stuff. So I will tell you that, we always get negative feedback on anything that we do, even the best of things. But we had some feedback somewhat recently that said, when it comes to the police department running animal control, the animals will always lose. And I take that to heart because I don't think it's true. And I think it misrepresents the efforts that have been put into this and where we're at. That said, it's always hard to let go of something that you've put a lot of effort into. And I know myself, all the staff, we've put a lot into where we're at. I have had the unique perspective that I oversaw in an organization, a Joint Powers Authority that oversaw animal control, not the care portion, but the control for almost 300,000 people. I could tell you this challenge here for this city of almost 17,000 people has been way more significant of a challenge. The issues that we face here are somewhat unparalleled compared to other communities of similar size and with a whole lot less resources. So that brings us to where we're at tonight. Which is to look at where do we go from here. I believe that the police department has done everything that we could possibly do within the resources that we've been given, but the next evolution forward is to see how can we deliver even better service, but also being mindful that it's likely a recession is coming. We have constrained resources, but there's also additional demands. In this case, as mentioned in the staff report, I'm not going to read everything in there because it's fairly detailed. But last year we started partnering with North Bay Animal Services. They provided contract services. They've continually jumped to assist us as we faced various challenges over the last year with providing contracted animal control officers as well as kennel technicians. Not everything's been great. There's been challenges. I think for them, the volume that they saw in the community was challenging, and also too, getting an understanding of what they were going into. But that said, this is what these folks do, and I think that it complements the efforts of individuals like Charmaine Weldon, Dr. Sally, and others who've actually stepped up to the plate and done what they could do for the animals. Over the last year, we've worked with North Bay to try to determine if this is something that they wanted to take on and sort of see how things would work in the community. We've taken to heart any negative feedback that we received regarding services. We've adjusted things. We've tried to tackle stuff, and I would tell you that what you're seeing tonight certainly isn't the end game. We have to think, I was reading, there's a saying, it says, going shopping with champagne tastes, but a beer budget doesn't work out well. I'm not sure that I want to compare the city's budget to a beer budget, but we have a lot of demands as a growing city. So what's being proposed is for North Bay Animal Services to provide a 10-year contract. There's no escalator in the contract. and for them to take over all the animal care and control responsibilities within the city. This isn't new for them. They've expanded from City of Petaluma to other jurisdictions in Sonoma County. I believe it was just released this week that they signed contract with City of Sebastopol to take over their animal care and control. I think what this does for the city is ensures that we provide continuity of services despite challenges that we've seen with recruitment and retention for positions. It continues our efforts towards a no-kill shelter, at least within the constraints that we have at this time, and looks to provide additional services. You may have seen at the Blue Zones event, they brought out the, what's the name of the wagon? The Cuddle Shuttle. Again, they have resources by providing services to other jurisdictions that we on our own wouldn't be able to afford or do, and I think that's something that doing this contract will be able to provide. Specifically based upon community feedback and recent events, one of the things that we did change in the original proposal, but it's before you tonight, we've been operating with an animal control officer for 5 days a week. In the proposal, it will expand that to 7 days a week coverage. It's still not 24 hours a day coverage. There's still going to be challenges with transporting animals out of the area to free up space in the shelter. When they have training and so forth, our officers will continue to bear that responsibility when they're not available, but at least provides a greater coverage, and it's still within the budget amount. As I mentioned, there are some transitionary things that are being addressed in here. Specifically, it's $375,000 annually. I did a little pulling of numbers, and I'll get to it in a minute, but looking back historically, we've seen about a $40,000 a year average increase over the last 5 to 6 years on our costs, and they continue to go up. And on some years, there's been fairly dramatic increases, and that doesn't include the almost $400,000 of capital investment to keep things going. The city, under this agreement, North Bay would retain fees collected as part of the provisions of services. However, your council would still retain the authority to set those fees. So like any other fees, there's a hearing process. Individuals can bring concerns, and you'd have the opportunity to adjust them and either subsidize the service or provide it right at the cost of delivering the service. We would make available initially the 2 animal control trucks that are owned by the city. We essentially effectively lease them to North Bay right now. North Bay would be responsible for the upkeep and fuel, excluding major repairs, and we've defined that as repairs over $1,000. After 5 years, we would transfer ownership of the vehicles to North Bay for $1 each. Just looking at their lifespan, that would be great if they make it to the 5 years. Our roads are challenging to vehicles. But once again, sort of an economy of scale that we found working with North Bay is they have a greater network than we do of resources for things like fixing air conditioners in cars. They've even helped us out through some of their contacts with our police vehicles. After the 5 years, I mentioned we'd transfer them over to them. We have one truck right now that was, I believe, bought by the city for $1 from City of Lakeport, I believe, some years back. We would transfer that one upon execution of the contract. As far as the facility that's pictured on the screen, we would make that available to North Bay. Likely as part of the contract, it would be like $1 lease back. Government likes to use the $1, so it means something. But they would be responsible for operating the facility. We'd retain responsibility for major repairs defined as over $1,000. They would do all the minor repairs and upkeep of the facility. I can tell you that when you're looking for a contractor, it's important to ensure that they identify with your values and interests. And I know we've had probably many conversations with Mark, who's here tonight, their director, about our interest in making sure it's a clean facility, it's maintained in the condition that it's currently in, that we continue to improve it, and I have confidence that they understand our perspective on that. There's obviously a lot of development going along out there that's planned, and like any other development, there's going to be concerns about sort of how does a site transform, and we've had conversations about that. That would be addressed in depth in the contract, just in terms of making sure that we communicate regarding if they add additional things to the site. The city would be responsible during the term of the contract to ensure there is a facility available. If we had some major windfall of big development and they decided they needed to move the facility and they paid for that, then obviously, we'd make that happen so that North Bay had a place to bring the animals. So what you're being asked for specifically tonight is to authorize the city manager to sort of take this across the finish line. We've negotiated all the high points. We had a negotiating team that included the finance director, members from PD, animal control staff, and so forth. But the city manager would negotiate the final parts, work out all the legal language, but ensure that it's consistent with what's being presented to you tonight for the $375,000 a year for a 10-year term. It would be exempted from competitive bidding due to the specialized nature of the services, so you'd make that finding in the proposed resolution. So with that, we have Mark is here. He can answer any questions that the council may have. I'm obviously available, and we have Lieutenant Snyder, so move it on to your questions.
Chief White, thank you for that very comprehensive report. Always appreciate hearing from you. Any council members have questions at this point? Councilmember Claffey?
Hey, Chief, I may have missed this, but the 6-month opt-out, has that been decided upon yet?
Yeah, so conceptually, we've talked, it would be addressed in the contract, but we would look at a no cause would be 6 months. A for cause would be shorter. It may end up being slightly longer. I mean, the challenge with this thing is once you make the move, it's not good for either party to have a sudden change or the community. But yeah, we have tentative agreement on that. We would work out the exact language in the contract.
Great. And then we have a representative from North Bay on the line, is that?
Right there.
Oh, hi.
He's in the flesh.
Thank you for that, Director.
So 2 questions for you. We as a city, we're trying to really improve our customer service, our resident experience. Going through your website, I see the complaint process is pretty antiquated. Is there a project in place right now to upgrade that? I'm specifically talking about the complaint forms.
So thank you for having me. I'm Mark Scott with North Bay Animal Services. There is a process in place. We did hire somebody who actually started today, the 16th, and she's a developer of forms. And so we want to make our system a lot easier, so you can just fill it out online and then dump it into our email address, basically. Yep. So she's going to be starting working on that. Because it is a little bit old school where we have to email it to you, you fill it out, and we need the hard copy back. And obviously with COVID, things have changed, so we want to make it a little bit updated. So we're in the process.
Yeah, I love that you guys are doing that by your own volition. The other piece here is because this is a pretty extensive contract, it's 10 years, one of the things I've really been pushing for with city contracts is that we assure that any employees are earning a living wage based on our city's living wage calculator. Is that the case for, well, I guess this is more for city staff if this is something we can include in the contract, but I just wanted to make sure that that is a goal that you guys would be aligned to.
I can speak to that now, and definitely if you want to put it in there, we can. But we hired staff back in December, I think it was when we first started. They started $18 an hour. That's what all of our staff starts at. The lead senior officer that will be working there is going to make close to 25. So that's well above what they already make, which I think is like, $9 difference. So they're already, being taken care of because we ask a lot of them. We also want to take care of them as well. Their benefit package, we offer 401k, excuse me, 401k and also a 100% coverage of medical. So they get Kaiser fully covered.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mayor Slutin.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. Is there, this is a 10-year contract. That's a long time. Is there any clauses in there that if North Bay doesn't perform their duties and if kill rates go way up, is there a way that we can cancel the contract?
Yes, so in the language, a no-cause termination, so a convenience termination, we've been talking about would be a 6-month. If it was for a cause, it could be as soon as 30 days within there. As far as the kill rate specifically, their philosophy of their whole organization is no kill to the extent possible. What we haven't worked out is we understand there's a potential for something in between saying, hey, we want to sever the relationship versus, addressing an issue that comes up. Like, in other words, it may not rise to termination, but we need to make sure that it's handled. Our intent at this point would sort of be a requirement that if we identify an issue, either party in performing a responsibility under the contract, that there would be a timeline requirement, say, within 14 days to meet and engage. And I think also too, as part of this, we've been talking with their executive director or with Director Scott about having an opportunity that council regularly would get sort of an update on what's happening. And that would also be a public opportunity to raise any concerns that the council may have regarding how the services are being delivered. So sort of a two-pronged approach to addressing issues. The final one, which is a little bit difficult to address, is sort of if we feel that a contracted requirement, like let's say the 7-day-a-week coverage for an animal control officer, if for some reason something pops up and they're unable to fulfill that, that we would have an opportunity to call it sometimes like a clawback provision, to where, if we're not getting the service we're paying for, that we'd somehow make sure that that was addressed. They're open to it, but they also have to make sure that, it's going to work for them, because there are some, times, like there's times, for example, on events where they're going to give us more staffing. And we've seen that just with the kennel technician. We paid for one kennel technician. I think at times there's been 4, sometimes 5 up here with individuals being trained at one time.
I'm just talking specifically about Charmaine. I think she has single-handedly made the transition from what was originally the situation to being so successful with the kill rate and able to do all the adoptions and stuff. And I certainly hope that a person like her is still around to help us, because she apparently has the connections to make that work. So I want to make sure that that's still going to happen.
So we did offer a position to her, and she has accepted.
Thank you.
We couldn't exactly put that in the staff report, but I figured it would come out.
The mayor has tough questions. Councilmember Kramer.
I'm glad to hear that as well, by the way. Just one question for you. Is the control officer that's going to be assigned up here, will they be local or located locally, or
So
community?
the officer that will be assigned here in the future will be local. Right now, we're sending someone up that's
Right.
trained and can train the local officer. We also actually hired another officer today. I met with her today. She'll be starting tomorrow. So we've also been putting that in the works, and she is from here. So, but it's going to take 3 to 6 months to get her fully comfortable with dealing with all the different things that come at you.
But you will be eventually be here.
Yes, absolutely.
That's good to hear. Chief White, you mentioned fees in your presentation, and I didn't quite, could you clarify?
Sure. So under the agreement, North Bay would retain the fees that they collect. For example, somebody goes to redeem an animal and so forth, they would retain those fees. Eventually, the dog licensing, they would also retain those fees and then obviously use them towards rabies control, that sort of thing. The point that I was making, though, is that I think as a council, I wanted to make sure that you knew that you would still retain control over setting those fees. So just like any other fees, periodically staff would come and say, for example, they'd say, hey, it costs us, approximately X amount of money to board a dog for a day. The council could ultimately decide to say, well, we want to set the rate at this level because some things end up being subsidized, because it makes more sense to do it that way. The point being is you're not going to lose control over setting those rates. So you can be sensitive to the needs of the community in doing stuff. Obviously, they'll come back to you and tell you, well, here's what might be the impact of doing that. But they're well aware of what we have currently set. They have provided a proposed one, which we're bringing back, I believe, a fee schedule update next month. So you'd have opportunity to hear about that, the public, and so forth.
Then getting back, you'll be collecting the fees. You'll also be, for the dog licensing, for instance, you'll be sending out the notices and handling all of that?
Correct.
That'll be
One of the main reasons for setting the fees by the city council is so that we can't price gouge someone and say, from now on, it's $200 to license your dog, right? That should be set by the city council. Actually, every city that we've taken licensing fees from, we've actually reduced the cost that it was prior. So we're actually charged $20 for altered dogs, $25 for unaltered dogs.
If your dog stays with us, it's usually $20 a day, because we have to feed them and care for them. But that's something that is basically the bare minimum of what it costs to take care of them. But it still leaves that decision in your hands to make sure we're held accountable.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other questions from the council, we'll open this up to the public for comment. Sir, would you mind introducing yourself, and are you a resident of Clearlake?
I'm the guy that supposedly is going to be taking care of a lot of properties soon.
I believe that
We're going to need to
insinuation
talk
was-
about that.
You were listening.
Bruno Sabatier, resident of Clearlake. I think it's great that North Bay works with so many different cities. I think they can take the successes that they've seen in other places and be able to come to you and provide those examples to see if that can be implemented here, rather than trying to learn on our own with what might or might not work. What's difficult on this conversation is it really sounds like the same conversation about the properties. We are looking to take care of dogs that people have chosen to take on as a responsibility and are not being responsible for. Same thing for those properties. They own those properties, but they're choosing, or they can't take the responsibilities in their own hands. So my question to you is, I didn't see anything in the contract that is proactive in reducing the issue of the dogs, rather than somebody who can go out there because there's phone calls and complaints. Is there anything in the contract where there's one day a year for spay and neutering, or one day a year for free licensing, something to really get the community members to take control of the multiplying animals that we see in our communities, that eventually will just ask for more and more animal control in our community, which is more of a burden on your budget, versus trying to control what it is and bringing it down, so that then we are still in need of animal control, but not to take care of people's responsibilities, just to take care of the things that do happen because animals aren't always 100% under control. Just kind of curious if there's a proactive part. I don't believe I saw that in there, and if that's something that maybe is being talked about in the background and is not part of the contract. But that to me is an important part of, in the future, instead of this growing problem, of how it is that we can try and manage it. Thank you.
If I could address the thing, and then Mark may want to address as well. There is provision there, obviously, education, going out in the community with enforcement, that sort of thing. But I think what you're really getting at is sort of like, how do we move the needle on the entire thing? What we've been talking about, and I think that's an achievable, I'm all about achievable goals versus really big stuff that we can't solve. One of the things we've been talking about are the aggressive animals. So that's something that's a much smaller subset of the animals that are out in the community. It's an area where, in talking with Mark, he has recommendations on updating the city code. By entering into a contract like this, he can take care of all the day-to-day stuff and overseeing it and supporting Charmaine and the staff down there with dealing with that. And then we can take on those other responsibilities of working with city attorney to draft ordinances and update it. And then obviously we're very good on the enforcement side of that, right? If we issue administrative citations and so forth, to start addressing that. The bigger picture thing, I think they're well aware of the challenges that we have. I don't know that any of us have a really good answer, because it seems like, once again, there's a big call for action to take care of the issue, but things that we might do that other cities have done, for example, breed restrictions, right? We know that there's animals that we get in that are really hard to adopt out. That's why cities implemented breed restrictions. I don't feel like there's support for that in the community. But I think it'll be things that we'll continue to talk about. And, I'm a big fan of letting them, come and report periodically to the council and say, here's what issues we're seeing and so forth. And then we can be responsive. And by being financially responsible with this contract, as we hopefully get additional revenues through economic development and that sort of thing, then we can say, hey, we've got $50,000 to put towards X goal. The last thing that I did want to add is that their approach to release of animals is something that we haven't been able to do. We've tried to it, but they make sure that as animals go out, they're spayed, neutered, all up to date on everything. And it's not for a lack of trying on our part. It's literally access to resources, stuff like that. They have a much greater network of resources. So that said, I don't know if you want to add anything else, Mark, to that.
I mean, the reality is he brings up really good, concerns. And the only way I can really address it without having a hard number to say like, oh, we have to do 400 of these or 200 of those, is to really just tell you our history of where we've been. We started last July. We've done over 240 cats that were transferred out. Yesterday, we took 30 cats and took them out of the Clearlake shelter. 30 cats having a litter in 1 year, that's 360 cats, right? So just by removing them, getting them altered, even if they came back, you're not going to have that additional increasing problem. So the work that he's talking about is kind of just what we do every day. We pulled the dogs that were from that home that was running amok throughout the city. We pulled 3 from the house that we were able to get. When we went back to get the rest, they're gone. So it's the daily work, the checkup, the following up, all that's part of it. But to have a hard number to say we have to reach this goal by the end of the year, like we've already surpassed that just by doing the partial contract that we're already doing. So anything further is just going to enhance off of that.
I appreciate that, and just a second, Councilmember Kramer. Chief, thank you. Your mind was working just as mine was for Supervisor Sabatier's comments. As a legislative body, I think we can enact ordinances that could mitigate some of those problems and make animal owners more responsible for their pets. Councilmember Kramer.
Yeah, earlier, Dr. Sally spoke, and one of the things she mentioned was the need for more veterinarians, use of more veterinarian services. Do you have that capability? You just said that you've altered a number of cats here in the last few days. It sounds like you do. So do you have that covered, I guess
So
is my
we
question.
do have that covered, and just our area, we have, I think it's 4 emergency hospitals 24 hours a day. That's pretty darn good. Pretty nice. We also have several vets that we work with locally that can, when we transfer in, that we can get them fixed that way. But including the vet here in Clearlake, we've also contracted with them to start doing some of the animals from the shelter directly. And I think we started that 3 weeks ago, and we've already done like 6 or 8.
The spay neutering?
Yes.
Okay.
That way they're already, when they go out, they're already altered and ready to go and won't continue the problem.
Councilmember Overton.
I remember back, some years ago, many years ago, in fact, that there is an ordinance that says unless they are purebred or have a license to kennel, that they do have to be fixed.
There is. I was talking about breed restrictions, so
Okay.
places have adopted, like you can't have pit bulls, these sorts of things.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Director Swanson, anyone on Zoom?
There are no hands raised on Zoom, Vice Mayor Purdock.
Thank you. Bring it back to council for.
Can I have
I'd
one
like to
last
make a
thing?
motion.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
one last comment.
Sorry, I know we passed. I just want to say thank you to everybody that's been super helpful. Dr. Sally, Charmaine's been amazing trying to figure out how to balance this all. It's a very heavy load, and they've been carrying it thus far. And success to me looks like when they're up here saying, hey, this is a good thing, because they know.
Sir, I want to thank you.
everybody else.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for your professionalism, your willingness to be here late at night for silly council meetings, and to give your reports out. It truly is appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now,
Go ahead.
Mr. Vice Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 2022-41. A resolution of the city can read by title only. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Clearlake authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute a contract with North Bay Animal Services for the provision of animal care and control services.
Second?
I have a motion by Councilmember Kramer and a second by Councilmember Claffey. Director Swanson, would you offer a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Overton. Councilmember Kramer.
Aye.
Councilmember Claffey.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Purdock.
Aye.
And Mayor Slutin.
Aye.
And again, Chief, thank you for a good report, and appreciate your staff. Lieutenant, thank you for all your work. We are almost at 2.5 hours into this meeting. Would anyone like to entertain a brief recess or should we just keep powering through? All right, moving on. Consider item number 22, considering a memorandum of understanding between the City of Clearlake and the City and the Clearlake Municipal Employees Association for a period of July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2025. Mr. Flora.
Director Swanson will give the staff report.
Thank you.
Honorable Mayor and council members, tonight you have before you the proposed memorandum of understanding for the Municipal Employees Association. The current memorandum of understanding expires at the end of this month. The agreement highlights are included in the staff report, and I'll go over them briefly. The term is a 3-year agreement effective July 1st, 2022, and going through June 30th of 2025. There's a wage increase proposal of 4% base COLA increase effective the first day of the pay period commencing on or after July 1st, and a 3% increase for the same of July 1st of 2023. Additionally, there is a 3% base salary increase COLA effective the 1st of July of 2024. There are several new changes for the agreement, which include a uniform pants voucher for maintenance workers, a health in lieu payment change, and some other clarifying language within the MOU on standby assignments, grievance procedures, merit increases, items like that. It's outlined in the staff report. One thing we are happy to add is a wellness stipend of $200 per fiscal year, a reimbursement for costs related to wellness and stress management for both the POA and the MEA classifications. So I can answer questions if you have any.
Thank you, Director Swanson. Any questions of staff? Seeing no pins being waved in my hand or in my face. Go ahead, Mayor.
With this, are our employees the best paid in the county?
I believe that we are the highest in 99% of our positions. I think there might be one of the, like the office assistant and the maintenance worker, and part of that is in this agreement, we agreed to look with the MOU at a market equity for the maintenance worker position.
Thank you, Director Swanson.
Thanks. I just wanted to hear you say that.
Yeah, you did get the attention of Supervisor Sabatier, Mr. Mayor. It absolutely was. Any comments from anyone here in the meeting? Director Swanson, any comments on Zoom?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom.
Bring it back to council for action. Well, Mr. Kramer.
Well, I will if no one else will. Mr. Vice Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding between the City of Clearlake and the Clearlake Municipal Employees Association, MEA, for the period of July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2025, and authorize the city manager to sign.
I have a motion by Councilmember Kramer and a second by Councilmember Overton. Director Swanson.
Did we have any public comments on this?
Yes, I called for that, Mayor, and we had none.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Director Swanson, could we have a oral vote?
Councilmember Overton. Councilmember Kramer.
Aye.
Councilmember Claffey.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Purdock.
Aye.
Mayor Slutin.
Aye.
And it passes unanimously. Moving on to item 23, consideration of a memorandum of understanding between the City of Clearlake and the Clearlake Police Officers Association for a period of July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2024. Mr. Flora or Chief White? Director
Director
Swanson?
Swanson.
Director Swanson.
Had to be one of the three of them.
I almost hit everybody.
Honorable Mayor and council members, tonight you also have before you the proposed memorandum of understanding for the Police Officers Association. This is a 2-year agreement effective July 1st and ending June 30th of 2024. Additionally, many of the provisions are the same as the MEA. The wage increase for this upcoming fiscal year is 4% with a 3% effective July 1st, 2023. This agreement adds the lead dispatcher assignment and the current detective who is currently receiving special duty pay. That's formalized within this MOU. The lead dispatcher is a new assignment. The field training officer position is removed from the 15% max of special duty pay. Again, we have the wellness stipend and some clarifying language in other parts of the MOU. Additionally, I wanted to add internally, there's some formatting and organization changes that needs to be made to the MOU, which we were not able to have at this meeting tonight. It is completed, but what happens is if you go through the MOU, it's kind of disorganized in this particular MOU. So what we've done internally is change there's a section called miscellaneous. We're taking that and putting those items where they should be. So we've completed that. I just wasn't able to get it to you before this meeting, and I want to run it by the POA real quick. But again, we haven't changed any language or anything. We've just put things under different headings. So that's my report, and I can answer questions.
Thank you, Director Swanson. Any questions for staff? Any member of the public wishing to comment on this item? Seeing none and waiting for the mayor, it looked like he had something to say, but I don't see his hand raised. I'll bring it back to.
Actually, I have one little news update. The Warriors won.
Yes.
Spoiler alert. Oh, Mr.
I think
Mayor.
that was aimed at Councilman Claffey.
I just wanted to know that Mr. Claffey
No, no.
heard that.
There'll be no more vacation for you.
The mayor's contract.
Okay, let's get back under control. Bring you back to council for any comments in the Zoom.
There are no hands raised in the Zoom, Mr. Vice Mayor.
All right. Any comments here in the gallery, Supervisor Sabatier? Very good.
Very quiet on that.
Bringing it back to council for action.
You want me to do it again?
I don't know.
Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Vice Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding, MOU, between the City of Clearlake and the Clearlake Police Officers Association, the POA, for the period of July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2025. And did you say 25 or 4 when you were talking?
24 on this one.
Okay, it's written 25 here, but it's through June 30th, 2024, and authorize the city manager to sign.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Kramer and a second by Councilmember Claffey. Director Swanson, can we have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Overton? Aye. Councilmember Kramer?
Aye.
Councilmember Claffey?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Purdock?
Aye.
And Mayor Slutin?
Aye.
Just like to, it passes unanimously, and I'd like to thank staff. I'd like to thank the dedicated employees of the city of Clearlake for making this probably one of the easiest processes in negotiation that I've been a part of. And still, we want to make sure we are better than competitive with those within the county, so we can retain the good employees that we have and hopefully recruit others to come in and come to work for us. Moving on to item 24, lease with Dell Financial Services for computer workstations for the police department. Chief White? Got that one right.
Good evening again. This item is for renewing our lease. Our lease is up, so it's time to get new computers. The good news for this one is the amount is less than our prior lease, so typically costs all go up, but this works out in our favor. The reason why this isn't on consent is it does require you to make a finding to exempt it from competitive bidding. The reason is Computer Logistics, who provides the computers, maintains our police network. There are certain requirements to service that network, so it makes financial sense to go with them. However, they are leased through Dell, and they're the standard computers that are offered under the various competitively bid contracts. So I can answer any questions. Otherwise, we would ask for you to adopt the resolution as proposed.
And thank you, Chief, for that background. Any questions for Chief White on this item? Any comments from the public, including Zoom?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Director Swanson. Bring it back to council for action.
Yeah, Mr. Vice Mayor, this is really an easy one. We get new computers and it costs us less. Did I understand that correctly?
That's correct, and it's already budgeted.
In this economy,
Mr. Vice Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 2022-38 and read by title only. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Clearlake authorizing the Chief of Police to enter into a lease with Dell Financial Services for computer replacements from Computer Logistics.
Second?
I have a motion by Councilmember Kramer and a second by Councilmember Claffey. Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Overton? Councilmember Kramer?
Aye.
Councilmember Claffey?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Purdock?
Aye.
And Mayor Slutin?
Aye.
Thank you, Chief. Moving on to item 25, an ordinance amending the Clearlake Municipal Code relating to traffic and parking regulations under ordinance number 263-2022. Chief White?
Thank you. This item relates to updating our parking and traffic regulations. I'm going to go through each of the items, and then I expect there's probably going to be some questions, but hopefully I can make it out of here tonight without getting into any trouble. So first item in the proposed change is parking in excess of 72 hours. Your council already has an ordinance in place regarding this. However, there are some nuances that individuals do to circumvent the intent of the regulation. By way of background, 72-hour parking regulations are very common throughout the state of California and are authorized by the Vehicle Code. The proposed change would add a requirement that if the vehicle is tagged for violating the section, so they put the notice on it that it's been parked in violation of it, that it would have to be moved at least 500 feet away from the location it was tagged. It can then return to the original location 72 hours after it was moved. This would not prevent somebody from moving it to their private property or other thing. It just covers basically moving it back and forth down the street and doing that sort of a dance. It also adds a requirement that prior to towing the vehicle, a notice must be placed on the vehicle notifying the owner of a potential violation of this section. The Vehicle Code doesn't require this, but I think consistent with some of the discussions earlier tonight, we want to make sure that people have a fair opportunity to comply before we're citing for these types of violations, and particularly before we tow away somebody's vehicle. So this is going above and beyond what's required by the Vehicle Code. Given the various things in these, I think it would be best if I just ask if you have any questions on each one, if that's okay? Or would you like me to go through all of them and then come back?
I like your first option.
Okay, any questions on number one? Okay, seeing none. On to number two, parking vehicles on unimproved property. So the zoning code has addressed this for quite some time, right? There's uses of property, and it was even mentioned earlier tonight, that you have to establish primary uses on properties typically before you start using them for secondary uses. And using a vacant parcel right in a residential neighborhood to store vehicles is not something that would be consistent with the zoning code. From an enforcement side, though, it's somewhat challenging because there are specific requirements with how you enforce the zoning code, how it's administered, and so forth. What this would provide is that you cannot park or store vehicles on unimproved parcels. and it would be consistent with the intent of the zoning code and address the blight that's caused by usage of these vacant parcels for parking that's opposed to their intended use. There are some exceptions listed in there, and obviously this isn't going to impact, for example, like the farmer who has their tractor and that sort of thing. It's a very specific use that you've probably all seen it, that impacts the community. The other thing is there's exceptions in there for somebody, say, they have to cut down trees or something on there, so they need to drive their vehicle on there, load it up. Any sort of legitimate work, that's not what we're after. We're after people just taking a residential parcel and turning it into a parking lot, or even a commercial one that's not intended for that use. Any questions on that one?
Glad that you described that in a little more detail to me.
Chief, just so I understand, so if someone owns two parcels next to each other and they use the one that is not attached to their primary residence as a driveway or a parking area, would that impact this?
It would, and I think that's something the city manager and I have talked about. We have that challenge in the city. I'm not sure that, I think it's something that has to be addressed in the zoning code. There are some cities that have said that if you have adjacent parcels that you can do secondary uses on it, but I know there's also challenges, so I don't want to step too much in that thing. But yes, letter of how it's written, it would certainly prohibit that sort of activity if a primary use was not established on the second one, but I'm going to let the city manager talk.
Yeah, I mean, what Chief White is saying is correct. We do run into that from time to time, and consistent with the intent of the zoning code, the option for property owners who want to do that is to merge the two lots together into one lot, and then they're able to store vehicles on that property that has a residence consistent with other sections of the municipal code.
And I believe too, there's a process for the temporary, if somebody had an unusual circumstance, they could come in, explain it, and they get a timeline.
Correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item, no parking areas. So most city ordinances have a section that mirrors sort of what's being proposed, but for some reason we didn't have it in our code. So simple things like the city engineer determines it's unsafe to park in a delineated island in the middle of a roadway. We didn't have anything specifically addressing that. The same issue too is when your council closes a road, it says that it needs to be closed for a specific function and we need it cleared out. We didn't have language that said how we would exactly enforce that. Part of that comes from when the city was incorporated, we adopted a bunch of county codes by reference. So this is more or less a cleanup thing, but there are a couple of things I wanted to point out. It adds into there the linkage between the vehicle code, which allows for removal of vehicles. So we've had several big construction projects in the city, and it sounds like we'll have a lot more, hopefully here in the near future, to where, for example, a road's been closed due to construction. This clarifies that if it's posted with the notices provided by the vehicle code and somebody doesn't move the vehicle, it's clear cut about that vehicle being removed from there.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, the next one, vehicle repairs. So this is again sort of adopting a best practice from other cities throughout the state. This specifically prohibits vehicle repair, dismantling, or similar activities being done on streets, including private streets that are open to the public and in parking lots. It provides an exception for emergency repairs that are necessary to move the vehicle to a more proper place. It prohibits leaving a car or vehicle on blocks, jack stands, or similar equipments on streets and parking lots. That sort of activity constitutes a hazard and contributes to blight, but we don't have a good way to address it right on. So this provides us a mechanism to address it. With regards to the definition, so we have a somewhat unique situation where we have a number of streets that to the average public you wouldn't know that they're not city owned, right? So the intent is to regulate that. We are not regulating that if you have a parcel and you have your own little private road through there. We have no interest in going on and dealing with the road situation in there. It's the streets where you basically can't tell. It's held open for public access. Any questions on that one?
No, sir.
Yeah. Okay, the last one is more of a cleanup thing, but it just provides for removal and storage of vehicles that are parked in violation of any city ordinance or a council resolution. The California Vehicle Code gives your council the authority to do this, but again, sort of the code wasn't clear on when and how this could be done, so this just implements the California Vehicle Code with respect to the items. Your council would still retain jurisdiction on any sort of closure orders to determine could vehicles be towed from there or could they not. And the concern about the public being notified on these, they would have to, on any of the ones where vehicles are going to be towed, there has to be signs posted. And I think that that's something that sort of in the context of all this, as we sort of grow into the next evolution of the city, that we could do a better job out of putting up signs and that sort of thing. As we improve the roadways, they're no longer dirt roads. We'll have to consider that in projects.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions at this point? I'd like to open it up to the public for any comment or question. Any member of Zoom?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Well, I'll bring it back to council for action.
Hold on, I made a mistake. So if you go to introduce it, let's see, 8-6.8 should be 8-6.7, and 8-6.9 should be 8-6.8. It's a clerical thing on the numbering.
Thank you, Chief, for that clarity.
8.6 should be 7.
Yeah, they should follow logically, so it will read 8-6.5, 0.6, 0.7, and 0.8. Right now, there's a gap between 8-6.6 and 8-6.8.
You don't need to state the number in the motion. We'll fix that. All you need to say is 8.6,
Yeah, okay.
or actually the ordinance number
8-6.
263.
If the title's correct, it's just inside of there, we'll
Okay,
fix
we're
it
gonna
up.
read it by title
Yeah.
only. Yeah. Okay, you're all looking at me.
I look to the right.
Gonna do it? This one seems like it needs an expert.
Mr. Vice Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 263-2022, read by title only, an ordinance amending Chapter 8, Section 8-6 of the Clearlake Municipal Code related to traffic and parking regulations.
Second?
I have a motion by Councilmember Kramer and a second by Councilmember Claffey. Director Swanson, could you offer a roll call vote?
Councilmember Overton? Councilmember Kramer?
Aye.
Councilmember Claffey?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Purdock?
Aye.
Mayor Slutin?
Aye.
Thank you, Chief, for cleaning that up for us. Last item on our agenda.
And I would note he's had his one mistake for the year, so.
I did have a 8-6.7, but we probably would have been here all night, and I thoughtfully removed it.
Thank you for being
Yeah,
so
thanks,
thoughtful,
thanks.
Chief. And I don't count that as a mistake.
It was quite controversial,
you
but
know.
I'll bring it in the future.
All right. Item number 26, authorization of job description and/or placement into salary schedule for certain administrative position, resolution number 2022-42.
Director Swanson?
Honorable Mayor and council members, tonight the council is being asked to adopt job descriptions for the Recreation and Events Coordinator, the Deputy City Clerk / Human Resources Technician, and Account Clerk 1/2, and set the salary ranges for those positions and authorize those positions for the next fiscal year budget. Additionally, the council is being asked to authorize the dispatcher aide position and set the salary range by resolution for the next fiscal year budget as well. Earlier tonight, your council heard a presentation, while briefly during the budget workshop, on the creation of the Recreation and Events Division within the Administrative Services Department. The authorization of this entirely new division will necessitate the creation of personnel classifications not currently within the classification plan. Additionally, it logistically makes sense to redistribute some of those job duties currently found in the Facilities Coordinator / Deputy City Clerk position to exclude those found within the new job description of Recreation and Events Coordinator. So the Recreation and Events Coordinator will serve as the new Recreation Program and Event Coordinator for the city. This position will assist in creating recreation programs for all ages, oversee city-owned facilities and properties, and organize city-sponsored events, and assist the community with the process of using city facilities for special events. This is something that we are really excited to introduce, and I, for one, who have lived in this community most of my life, I am super excited to bring this to fruition. So, with the split of facilities duties from the current facilities coordinator deputy city clerk position into this new position, we are also asking to adopt a deputy city clerk / human resources technician position and have that position continue with human resources and risk management duties. So additionally, as finance department reviews their ongoing procedures and functions, staff is proposing a split of the current account clerk position into 2 classifications, which is similar to the way the maintenance worker 1 and 2 is split. The account clerk 1 would be an entry-level position with a transition into the account clerk 2 as the incumbents gain experience and learn the position a little bit more. That's an opportunity for advancement within the department, and it's crucial to recruitment and retention. So staff is recommending the council adopt the account clerk 1/2 position. Finally, the position of dispatcher aide currently exists within the city's classification. However, the job has not been filled for many years, and this position assists the on-duty police dispatcher with calls and clerical duties, including call logs, data entry, and filing. So there is a list of the recommended salary ranges for all positions within the resolution. And at the time I wrote the report, we were finalizing negotiations with the bargaining units, the MEA, for inclusion of these new positions, and they have accepted. So it's appropriate for the council to adopt resolution 2022-42. I can answer questions if you have them.
Thank you, Director Swanson, for the very comprehensive report. Councilmember Overton, do you have a question?
I do on the salaries of these here. Where did you come up with the salary for the recreation and event coordinator? That seems awful high for that position, considering that if you look at the account, the clerks and stuff, they're like more detailed. So where did we come up with such an amount for this wages? Just seems a little high for me.
We came up with the classification because it is the same amount of duties and level of expertise as similar classifications such as the senior account clerk. And in the future, there will hopefully be staff. So this was a foresight, and it's within the same classification as others at 37.
Okay, so you're saying the recreation and event coordinator has the same as an account clerk duties?
No, the senior account clerk, senior maintenance worker, they're both at 37.
I just think this is kind of a position that I didn't really see. I'm just questioning the amount that it's starting off at for a new position in our city. I hope that it's filled very well.
Well, I mean, it has a little bit different responsibilities. The account clerk, there's more technical responsibilities. This is a position that we would be asking someone to work, fairly independently and coordinating a number of things and organizing and facilitating recreation programs. And so, staff felt like that you can't directly compare the responsibilities. I don't think they're a little bit different, but we felt like the overall.
And I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of weekends with this position, being as it's a
Well,
recreation.
I mean, the events, yeah, of course, yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Any comments from the public on this item? Really? Any member or public from Zoom?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Bringing it back to council for action.
Mr. Vice Mayor,
That's good. I was going to
I
suggest.
move to adopt resolution number 2022-42, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Clearlake approving job descriptions and salary levels for the Recreation and Events Coordinator, Deputy City Clerk / Human Resources Technician, and Account Clerk 1/2 positions, and salary level for the Dispatcher Aide position.
I'll second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Claffey and a second by Councilmember Overton. Director Swanson, could we have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Overton? Aye. Councilmember Kramer?
Aye.
Councilmember Claffey?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Purdock?
Aye.
And Mayor Sluten?
Aye.
I thought we approved this in the budget workshop, just saying. This is great. Thank you, Director Swanson.
Thank you.
This is exciting. Moving on to item K, City Manager's Report.
Okay, only 3 quick items. The Transit Center project near the community college is out for review, so happy to see that project moving forward, which will be a great addition to the city. The splash pad project has been delayed somewhat. There is a difference of opinion on the environmental and tribal consultation process between the city and a couple of our tribes that we've been working with. And we believe that we've exceeded our legal responsibility related to consultation, and but in an effort of collaboration, we're attempting to work collaboratively and sort of identify a path forward that has the least resistance and certainly gets that project accomplished for the children in our community. So I just wanted you to know that. If there's additional details you would like, I'd be happy to talk to you individually about that. But we're hoping to get that on track and under construction soon. But that day has been delayed. The final thing, all of you have been registered for the Cal Cities Conference in Long Beach. We went ahead and registered all of you. If for some reason you're not able to attend, please let Director Swanson know. But we have moved forward with setting up those accommodations. So, there's some travel things and whatnot that we'll need to coordinate with each of you. But hopefully you can all attend. So with that, that's my report.
Thank you. Mr. Flora, what is the date of the Cal Cities? Do you recall?
I knew you were going to ask, but I didn't look it up. Do you know?
Just so it's in the record.
It is Tuesday the 6th through Friday the 9th of September.
Thank you, Director Swanson. Council member reports. Mayor Sluten, do you have a report?
I have nothing to report at this point. The only thing I had to report that we went from 24 degrees to 84 degrees in the last couple of hours from West Yellowstone to the east side of, or the west side of Idaho, and that's about it. Thank you.
That was important. Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Overton.
Well, one, I most likely will not be able to go to the conference, so just let you know that right now. So, two, I just want to report I didn't have any particular meetings that I went to report on, but I do want to thank the community for supporting our mystery dinner, and especially our Councilmember Kramer for always being the first one to buy the ticket. We really appreciate his support. And then he forgets that he paid, and I could have stuck him with another couple of tickets, but hey. So we had a great time. I want to thank our Supervisor Bruno Sabatier and our Sheriff for Brian Martin stepped in for me because we had a couple of people that were unable to do it. But we had a great time. Everybody had a lot of fun. And we are already planning another one for more of a family-oriented one. So look forward to that coming up. So, but I just really want to thank the community for coming out and supporting us. It ended up being a really, really fun time. And so I appreciate it. And that's really all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Claffey.
Nothing to report, Vice Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kramer.
Just a couple of things. Last Sunday, our Clearlake Chamber of Commerce presented a car show, went over very well, even though the weather was blustery. And a couple of cars from Lakeport didn't come because I thought it was raining on this end when it wasn't. But at any rate, even with that, we did very well. Had a lot of folks there, had some pretty good music, had good vendors, and it was a success for the chamber. And Monday, I attended Risk Reduction Authority meeting. I heard the report that Angela gave to us tonight. The other thing of significance was our actual spending this year for the RRA was $47,000 and some odd dollars. They have a budget proposal for $38,000 for the coming fiscal year, and that's primarily for NCO's administrative duties, as I understand it. I believe that they're gonna, the county, I think, I know the county, the two supervisors there have indicated that they would be providing their discretionary funds in the amount of $25,000 to support the RRA next year. And we'll probably be asking both cities and other agencies in the county, including the fire districts, to put up monies to make, they're looking have a goal of $50,000. So at some point, I think in the future, they will be coming to us. Something to think about. And that's all I have.
Thank you. I have nothing to report. Do we have any future agenda items? Anyone would like to add? Mr. Mayor? You're muted.
I have no additional future agenda items.
Thank you, sir. Nothing here at council. With that, we are adjourned.
Mr. Vice Mayor, thank you for taking over for me in my absence.
It was entirely
Thank
my
you.
pleasure, sir. Enjoy your vacation.
Bye-bye, everybody.